Okay. I was making sure Kenny was. I was making sure Kenny was.
I'm still not going to get, like I put on my little comment thing, I'm still not going to give up on the trees because I talked to a forestry lady. So what's the tree? The whole spot right there was nothing to hold. And he said it right. And I want to know who said it because when I talked to the forestry lady, I'm glad you're here.
Ladies and gentlemen, the time is 6:00 p.m. This meeting of your Pontiac City Council is hereby called to order. President Pro Tem Carrington, are you able to introduce our guests this evening for the invocation?
Yes, sir. The mic. Okay. I'd like to introduce Pastor Lester Magnum. He's the pastor of St. John United Methodist Church on 620 University Drive. One of the key cornerstones of his church is that they really are concerned with health awareness as a major focus for the work of this particular church. I'd like to welcome the pastor for the invocation. Thank you.
Let's bow heads for prayer. Gracious and almighty God, we ask that you would bless our mayor, our city council, and all those who work to serve the city, that they may be a blessing to all the people of the city of Pontiac, Michigan. We are all different people, Lord, but for the sake of this city, bless our leaders to be one in body and one in mind, embracing the common good, the common need of every household in our city. Bless our leadership, Lord, with spiritual gifts of empathy and compassion, that think of the poor and the needy as though they were poor and needed themselves. Our God, we pray for their health. Protect them, please, Lord, from disease and danger, seen and unseen, for they are not here for themselves. They're here to be servants, to be instruments in your hands, and we are so grateful for them. They are here to move the city a little closer to being a bright and shining star on a hill, that your glory may be known throughout the state of Michigan. We ask this blessing in the mighty name of Jesus, and we pray respect to any other God here, of any person here. Amen.
Remain standing.
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for a moment of silence. Let us remember now all those in our community whose lives have been lost. We will continue restating the names at next week's meeting, but in the meantime, please, in your hearts and minds, lift up the names of those who have passed in our community and in surrounding neighboring communities. A moment of silence, please. Thank you. You may be seated. Please proceed with the call of the roll, Mr. Clerk.
Carrington.
Present.
Goodman.
Present.
James.
Here.
McGinnis.
Present.
Nicholson.
Here.
Parker.
Here.
Rutherford.
Present.
Mr. President, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Quorum being established and all members present and accounted for. Is there a motion to approve this evening's agenda?
I make the motion to approve.
Moved by Nicholson, seconded by Rutherford. So we have a motion before us. Is there now a motion to amend the agenda, adding under City Council Resolutions section a new item number 4, and all business items correspondingly going down as well? And that resolution is advocating for strengthened transportation options for Pontiac and nearby communities.
So moved.
Support.
It's been moved to amend the agenda by Councilman Goodman, seconded by Councilwoman Rutherford. Distributing those resolutions for those that would like a hard copy of it. Any discussion on that motion to amend the agenda? Hearing no discussion, roll call on that particular amendment to the agenda, adding that resolution from the council. Clerk Doyle.
James.
Yes.
McGinnis.
Yes.
Nicholson.
Yes.
Parker.
Yes.
Rutherford.
Yes.
Carrington.
Yes.
Goodman.
Yes.
7 yeas, no nays.
Thank you. Are there any other motions to amend this evening's agenda, or questions or clarification of the main motion before us? Hearing no further questions or motions, with that, Clerk Doyle, if you could please proceed with the call of the roll for approval of this evening's agenda as amended.
Goodman.
Yes.
James.
Yes.
McGinnis.
Yes.
Nicholson.
Yes.
Parker.
Yes.
Rutherford.
Yes.
Carrington.
Yes.
7 yeas, no nays.
Thank you. With that, is there a motion? That motion carries. Is there now a motion to approve this evening's consent agenda?
I make the motion.
Support Carrington.
It's been moved by Councilwoman Rutherford, seconded by President Pro Tem Carrington. No discussion on that motion. We proceed with roll call. Clerk Doyle on approving this evening's consent agenda.
McGinnis.
Yes.
Nicholson.
Yes.
Parker.
Yes.
Rutherford.
Yes.
Carrington.
Yes.
Goodman.
Yes.
James.
Yes.
7 yeas, no nays.
Thank you. That motion carries. We're now at special presentations, and apologies to those at home and those in the audience this evening in terms of feedback from the microphone. Hopefully that'll be a limited occurrence. With that, I'd like to give the floor to Mayor Grimal and the administration on a presentation of the skate park project site selection. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. As we've discussed at previous council meetings, we're excited that we have secured sufficient funding to move forward with the skate park project, and a substantial amount of that funding is coming from the county. So we want to again thank our partners at the county for providing fully half of the total $250,000 required to fund the project. We wanted to at least start the conversation about possible places to locate the skate park. This is not a presentation about where a decision has been made to locate it. This is just a presentation about potential locations, and I'd like to hand it over to Ms. Borngesser to make the presentation. Ms. Borngesser?
Thank you, Mayor. So like the mayor said, this is a mere ideation and kind of creative conversation about where this site might be and which of our parks the skate park might be placed in. So just a couple of notes. In evaluating the various park locations, the 5-year Parks and Recreation Master Plan, which is the DNR approved plan, was used as a kind of guiding light. In that plan, it outlines several parks where a potential skate park could be located, and each of the parks mentioned in this presentation does contain a recommendation from that plan for a skate park. Next slide. Here you'll see the community partners that are involved. the Pontiac Skate Park project, which is comprised, I'm going to ditch this for a second, which is comprised of local community activists and skate enthusiasts. I'm sorry? Oh, the light. There we go.
Teamwork,
Lots
teamwork.
of-
I won't,
yeah.
I won't rule that feedback from the gallery out of order. Thank you for helping us logistically. Administration and Ms. Borgester, you still have the floor.
Yes, okay, so now you'll be able to see the community partners, which include the Pontiac Skate Park project, which is comprised of community activists and skate enthusiasts, of course, the city of Pontiac, Oakland County, the Ralph C. Wilson Jr. Foundation, and the Skate Park project, which is formerly known as the Tony Hawk Foundation. To the right, you'll see various images, and these are examples of parks that the Skate Park project has installed and funded in other locations, actually many of them being here in Michigan. So if you're around and you feel so inclined, take a look at them. There are several in Detroit and the rest of Southeast Michigan, as well as all the way up to Traverse City. So they're beautiful parks. They're not just kind of concrete structures. A lot of them include landscaping and foliage and environmental measures that make them a really beautiful thing to look at, as well as art installations and kind of creative architecture. So if you feel so inclined, visit their website. There are lots of photos, and they're actually really beautiful sites. Next slide. So in cohort with the Pontiac Skate Park project and that group of residents, we engaged in dialogue and conversation about potential sites. Now, the skate park project had held community meetings amongst themselves to engage residents on where they might like the park to be located. And what we have here is a presentation of 3 of those locations. The first site selection would be Galloway Lake Park. You'll see a few stats at the top of my slide that show acreage and that this is in Council District 5. Key indicators or key metrics for the desire for this location include proximity to public schools, adequate parking and public transit that goes to this location, the amount of space, truly, the inclusion in the master plan, and the potential development of the Ewald Center. This park is also in a location where neighboring communities might also enjoy it and patron our businesses and local establishments. Next slide. Thanks, Gil. The next location is Oakland Park. This is the location of the existing park. There are many nearby businesses. It's embedded in a little bit more of a neighborhood setting, and it is included in the master plan. The one piece of this that was lacking and why Galloway Lake is a preferred location is due to parking. Next slide. The third location is Richardson Park. This has proximity to hospitals and the downtown area, proximity to City Hall, and it was included as a site for a skate park in the master plan. So these 3 locations are the ones that we're considering now. We're interested in engaging dialogue and hearing feedback from council and the community. A few key things to keep in the back of your mind as you're evaluating these site locations. One, the opportunity for youth programming. There's a lot of opportunity as far as physical activity, but also STEM and STEAM programming, which has been kind of displayed by the Pontiac Skate Park Project group already. There's potential for economic development. What we've seen in other communities are businesses sprouting up for the skate community and kind of that culture around areas where there are large skate parks, and the grandeur and the size of this park would attract that kind of business. Patrons and residents from neighboring communities would come to the skate park. There is not a skate park of this size anywhere close to here. That would mean new patrons and new visitors to local businesses and restaurants. It would attract folks, and this would be a destination in Pontiac. There's a potential for events around the skate park, providing the city with revenue for temporary vendor licenses and things like that. Obviously, when you bring in grant funding of this type, it attracts other funders, so there is a potential for further park improvements based on the site that we select. I'll stop there. That was a lot of information, and I can answer any questions, or Mary Jane can join me and answer some questions.
Thank you. With that, council members that wish to be recognized? Councilman Goodman and then Councilwoman Rutherford.
So, to just clarify something that I brought up before, when it comes to, at least for me mentally narrowing down the two parks in which I believe would make the most sense, has the administration taken into consideration the cost for putting in a skate park when it comes to Oakland, the cost of removing the existing skate park? So I don't believe that the money that was raised for the skate park project itself covers removal and demolition.
So the actual grant agreement does not specify demolition. It just is for construction. So that would be something we have to clarify with the funder. Don't believe there's been an evaluation for removal, but perhaps that's a question for Vernon Planning. Mary Jane can answer.
So it would cover it. The issue is that we would rather spend it on, a new park, more space.
Right.
But yes, it would cover it.
Right, but so this, essentially, but the money that would come for removing it would come out of the money that's
Yes.
set aside. Okay,
Yes.
I just want to clarify about that. That's all I have right now.
Thank you, Councilwoman Rutherford and then Councilman Barker.
So you stated that you guys were looking at Galloway Lake, correct? Galloway Park, correct?
That's correct.
So what was the community feedback in regards to that? Because there's some other things that they want to see done in that park. Do we have letters of support from that actual community? Because what we don't want to happen is that we do all this and then it's an uproar because people want to still go fishing over there because there's still a way for them to go fishing. So where is the community input from that particular park?
The Pontiac Skate Park Project Group held community meetings, and I believe the conversation and dialogue was verbal. The skate park would not prohibit or get in the way of fishing activities or other recreational activities happening in the park. It's 10,000 square feet in a park that is
63 acres.
63 acres.
Okay. I just wanted to ensure, just so that you understand why I asked that, is that we do our due diligence because we don't want to offend people who want to use it for other different ways. We want to be inclusive when we make the decision about which park we're going to use. So thank
Absolutely.
you. That was all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Parker. You have the floor.
I yield. He asked my question.
Very good. Others that wish to have the floor on this discussion and the special presentation? Mayor Greimel and team, would you like to elaborate in terms of target timelines? Because they're, from when we did some budget work on this, it's a pretty tight time frame. So if you'd like to share with us in the community what parameters you're dealing with and time sensitivity to ensure that we land successfully.
Sure. So the timeline, as set, we should begin have a site selected in the next 2 months, and then begin engaging a contractor and that process by April. So the deadline and the closeout of this grant is November of this year. So obviously we're working on a very short timeline, which is unusual.
Thank you. Mayor Greimel, you have the floor.
I do want to emphasize, and this is why we wanted to bring this presentation tonight, to start the conversation, the community conversation about locations, because to Councilwoman Rutherford's point, it's very important that we receive community input, that we're doing this in partnership with the community and in partnership with the City Council. And so that's why, although we do have a tight timeline, we wanted to start that ball rolling by publicly talking about the options so that we can continue to receive input from council and from the community as a large. Because obviously, this project will only be a success if it's done in a way that fits community needs.
And on follow-up, is there a preferred point person or method that you would like community members, if they'd like to, always the opportunity in public meetings are afforded to our residents, but is there any other means that you'd like them to express their preferences?
Yeah, I would say send me an email for starters. My email address is T, that's my first initial for Tim. The last name is Greimel, G-R-E-I-M-E-L, so T Greimel, at pontiac.mi.us. And feel free to copy Ms. Borngesser on that as well. Her email address is Borngesser, B-O-R-N-G-E-S-S-E-R, so Borngesser at pontiac.mi.us. And then, I'll leave it to council as to whether or not you want to receive community feedback about it, and if so, in what form or fashion.
Thank you. Anyone else that wish to have the floor? Hearing no further discussion, thank you very much for your time and preparation. We now are at the second of two special presentations this evening. Update on upcoming road construction projects for Pontiac, presented with Mayor Greimel and City Engineer Abdul Siddiqui. Mr. Mayor, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. We wanted to, again, just highlight some of the upcoming road projects that we're looking at in the coming years. I know that at a recent council meeting, we talked about the need for safety improvements at the intersection of Woodward and South Boulevard. Council members expressed interest in trying to move that up in time so that it happens a little sooner. We did reach out, as I shared at the time, to the Michigan Department of Transportation, since it's a state highway, M1 Woodward, and they have agreed to move it up in time, so that'll happen a little sooner than they were originally projecting. Just as a general rule, we're trying to move as many of these projects forward as possible. The sooner we can get roads fixed, the better it is for our residents who won't have to drive over bumpy, degrading roads for as long a time period. But also, the sooner we do the work, the more affordable it'll be, because we'll avoid another year of inflation if we can move some of these projects forward a year. So with that, I'll defer to Mr. Siddiqui to get into the details and nuts and bolts.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Is this working? Okay. Good evening, everyone. Unfortunately, my presentation is not as flashy as Alexandra's. Go ahead to the next one. I'm just going to give high-level updates on our projects. Last calendar year, we did pavement repairs on Walton Boulevard, federally funded. We did the reconstruction of Vanguard Drive, leading to the FedEx property and to the MDOT headquarters. And we used an innovative method there. We got some recognition for that as well. Then there's Orchard Lake signals modernization. I'm sure several people have seen that, the flashy new street name signs and so on. We resurfaced Oak Ridge Drive and Sterling Lakes Drive. Go on. Thank you. Coming up this year, we've got Mill Street reconstruction in downtown from Water up to Huron Street, West Columbia resurfacing, Cherry Hill, Starlight, Fairmount resurfacing, Vining, Gambrell, Granville resurfacing, Granada and Omar resurfacing, and then University Drive Bridge over the railroad, just west of Bay. Capital preventive maintenance on that, and Kennett Road Bridge maintenance on that as well by, I believe that's over there by Emerson, yeah. Sorry, Alcott Elementary there. All right, next one, please. All right. Coming up in the future, we've got Orchard Lake over the Clinton River Trail. Oh, sorry, Clinton River by Bodette, rehab of that bridge. Walton Boulevard signal modernizations, and then followed by pavement repairs between Baldwin and Joslin. Auburn signals modernization and safety improvements, and then followed a couple years later by resurfacing of Auburn. Golf Drive and Bagley Street rehab. Golf Drive would probably be a resurfacing, and then Bagley would be a full reconstruct. That's the scope so far, and that would be in 2023. Orchard Lake resurfacing, that'll be federally funded. MLK resurfacing, and as the mayor mentioned, MDOT will be pulling forward the South Boulevard Woodward intersection reconfiguration to fall of 2023 construction, which will allow us then to pull up the Franklin Road resurfacing from 2025 to 2024 after MDOT's detour traffic has beat it up. And then there's the Woodward Loop two-way conversion as well with MDOT in 2024. Next slide, please. On the radar, we'd love to do a lot more residential streets. Funding available, obviously funding dependent. We're looking at also Giddings, doing some resurfacing and some reconstruction possibly to address the flooding issues that are recurring there. North Telegraph, Baldwin north of Walton, Elizabeth Lake, pavement repairs. We're also looking at Pike Street reconstruction, really through downtown and all the way east. And then that would also be paired with a connection of the Clinton River Trail, completing that connection through the city, through downtown. And then possibly a South Boulevard connector of the Clinton River Trail as well. Voorhees is in pretty bad shape. We need to find some funds for Kennett, Paddock, and then other similar, what I call minor majors, roads that don't typically score very well on external funding applications, but are still major roads in the city. That's my presentation. If anyone has any questions.
Thank you, Councilwoman Rutherford, and then Councilman Goodman, Councilman Parker.
So I'm a little confused because Golf Drive is horrible. I tore up my axle, I blew out a tire, and I'm not understanding why it's 2023. That's the first one. Number two, Bagley is horrible. Franklin is horrible. So my question is, where was the grading system for those? Because there are people who go to work on those roads, right? There are people who are taking those roads, right? And their cars are being destroyed. So I'm a little frustrated because we're not, the South Side isn't getting what we need to 2023, and I don't understand that.
Well, so projects, and when we get to the engineering contract extensions, we'll discuss it more. Engineering projects typically require a design period, really a planning period, a design period, and then they go to construction. So it does take some time. I joined the city in September of 2020, and at that point, Golf Drive was not planned. So I did put it on on our capital improvement plan, and we've gotten the design started on that now.
So is there any room to actually move it up to 2022?
I'll take a look at it. and
Okay.
let you know.
I have one more. Are we, because we're seeking out funding diligently for this project, correct?
We have been, yes.
So do we have a 6-month time plan, a 12-month time plan on what are the funds we're actually pursuing? Because there are funding that's located that we could actually get from CEOMG funding. I forgot, I don't want to say it.
SEMCOG.
Thank you, sir. They have funding as well. Are we pursuing those?
For Golf Drive and Bagley?
Uh-huh.
We have already pursued some funding.
Uh-huh.
It's only about maybe 10% of the full cost. There's no other opportunities right now that are on the radar, but we'll keep looking for other opportunities.
Thank you.
Mayor Grimel, to elaborate further.
Yeah, so we're aggressively pursuing all sources of funding. I've only been in my role for 30 days now, but we're very aggressively pursuing any and all grant opportunities. I know I've talked about that at past city council meetings in other contexts other than roads, but it certainly applies in the context of roads too. We do have designated funding for it, including from city funds, but the more we can get grant funding to pay for these things, the more we'll have city dollars available for other purposes and other priorities. So we're aggressively pursuing grant opportunities. The real issue in terms of the timing of some of these projects for 2023 as opposed to 2022 is more about the timing of going through design work and other preliminary work before we actually break ground. As I said in my introductory comments, to the extent we can move any projects forward, we're actively pushing for that. And obviously, Mr. Siddiqui gave 2 examples of situations where we've successfully done that. We're going to look to see if we can move more projects forward, including some projects potentially that are slated for 2023 to 2022. The challenge, though, again, is we've got to do the engineering work, we've got to do the preliminary work before ground's actually broken. And so whether or not it's currently possible to move that work forward, given the timing of where we are now, has yet to be seen. But we're certainly going to be looking at it very seriously, because I personally know, and I've been saying for a long time, that Gulf Drive is probably the single worst road in the city in terms of its condition. So I've said that many times. I'll say it again tonight. But Bagley's in really tough shape, Franklin's in really tough shape, and there's no question that those south side roads have been neglected for far too long. So we're working as quickly as we can under the constraints of and circumstances that we entered office to try to move as many of those projects forward as quickly as possible. But it does take time to do the design work and engineering work.
Goodman, then Parker, then Nicholson, then anyone else? Councilman Goodman, you have the floor.
So, not to debate on road quality between my person from the south side nor the mayor, but I live on Kennett and I live near Columbia, and I can say that Columbia is probably one of the worst roads, if not the worst, in the city. But related to that, can you explain to me and the community who may not be well versed in when it comes to road repaving, what is the difference between resurfacing and reconstruction in terms of the process and how much it actually repairs in terms of road?
Yeah, so resurfacing, we're typically just improving the surface, right? So if it's say it's an asphalt road, we'll mill off certain inches of the asphalt, certain depth of the asphalt, and put on new asphalt. We typically might do some spot-based repairs as well, as far as going into the ag base, or if there's a concrete base under the asphalt, we'll do some repairs there as well. Reconstruct is what it sounds like, is tear everything up and reconstruct. It's typically a lot more expensive. So sometimes we have to go for a 10 to 12 year fix instead of a 15 to 20 year fix, just to spread the wealth.
Right. So, because that does bring me to a solid point, and I know I can't see it right now, but the roads that you have in my district, including like Cherry Hill, which runs through North Hill Farms.
Yes.
I mean, again, I don't fully understand roads, but I think that some of there are a decent number of areas, both on Columbia and through Cherry Hill, that I believe are kind of beyond the point of just resurfacing. Some of those parts are, massive holes in the ground.
Right.
And I feel that up until this point, doing the process of attempting to resurface, like you said, is a much shorter fix. And I feel that some of these roads, and again, this is me being in the district that I'm in, having a special care for those. But I think there should be a little bit more consideration into figuring out long-term solutions, specifically for roads like Columbia and like Kennett, where for now a resurfacing might be good enough to get us, a couple terms from now.
Mm-hmm.
But there needs to be some real thought and effort put into the infrastructure, which I know you and the administration are doing. But I want to make sure that I hammer that point home.
Yes, and just to clarify, I mean, even if it's a resurfacing, like, if there's an area that's really bad on that road, we do go full depth and repair it. So that's the sort of the spot base repairs that we do, where you can say that those areas are being reconstructed, even though the overall treatment is a resurfacing.
All right, no question.
Councilman Parker, then Nicholson, then James, then Carrington.
Thank you. And thank you, Councilman Goodwin. I just wanted, I see you at Kennett, but I raised you at Giddings.
Order.
Giddings Road is, well, first it's a safety hazard, because when it rains real hard, it floods, and then cars trying to get past the flood run into
Right.
potential for hitting other cars. It's adjacent to a nationally known school, which causes a problem on both ends of it. So is there a possibility that you can, certainly because of just the location and with the problems that it caused safety-wise, that we can do something with that road quicker than when you're thinking about doing it?
So I haven't set a date on that one yet, and I think it might be quicker. So right now, we're studying the problem with the flooding. We're working with the Oakland County Water Resource Commission to study the capacity of the culverts and, what needs to be done to reduce the flooding. I don't know that you can always design for, complete elimination, but definitely reduce the flooding drastically. And so as soon as that's done, we'll know the full scope of work, and then we can prepare a project for it. So I would say within the next year and a half, I think I'm pretty positive that we'll have something for that.
So with that in with sorry, with my voice, and with that in mind, certainly, and I'm sure we're going to address as we look at how we fix that road, because to me it seems like there's a blind curve there that causes trouble when you're coming around that curve you can't see. So maybe there's something you could do with that as you're
Yeah, we'll look at that.
evaluating what you're doing with that particular street. But not only that's the south side of it, but the north side, which is the only feeder road to get out from the houses into over there. So that one needs to be worked because the bridge right past that little church also causes floods occasionally, and it causes problems.
Okay.
So
We'll look
if
at
you
that.
can move it up, the residents of District 5 would certainly appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Mayor Grimel, you have the floor.
This discussion has certainly highlighted what I think all of us have long known, which is we've inherited a lot of roads in bad condition all across the city. So I'm going to stop speaking in superlatives and talk about, I'm not going to talk about the worst road anymore. We've got a lot of roads, unfortunately, that we've come into office and seen are in tough shape and need a lot of work. But having said that, I do just want to speak quickly to Councilman Parker's point, which is that we are aware of the situation on Giddings, not just in terms of the pavement, but the flooding. And I do have a meeting coming up with some representatives of the school that you referenced, Councilman, to talk specifically about Giddings Road. And there is a need to redo the culvert under the road there to make sure that water is going under the road in a culvert as opposed to over the road. And that, of course, will help preserve the road for longer periods of time, too, if we keep the water where it's supposed to be. So, obviously a lot of priorities across the city, and we're working diligently to try to address the highest priority roads as quickly as we can.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Councilman Nicholson, then Councilwoman James, and President Pro Tem Carrington.
Hi, three good ones, good quick ones. You talked about a rolled method that we got some good press on, or can you elaborate on that? What was the
So,
process? And
I don't know how much people know about how concrete is paved versus how asphalt is paved, but basically we paved concrete like asphalt, and that means you're able to get trucks on it within a day instead of 7 weeks, and it was well suited for that location because FedEx trucks were going in and out regularly, and so yeah, we were able to open the road for them in a day. And typically concrete, you're not able to walk on right away. In this one, you can walk on it right behind the paver. So it's a very different method of paving.
from a
and
cost perspective, from a future use perspective?
So let me put it this: our residential roads are all asphalt, full depth asphalt. You go to other communities, Detroit, for example, all of the residentials were constructed in concrete back in the early 1900s. And so what they were able to do is overlay them with asphalt and then mill and fill that asphalt on multiple cycles. And several of those streets are still not reconstructed yet. So I would like to convert, maybe it's a slow process of converting our residentials to concrete, and this roller compacted method would be a great way to do that with minimal disturbance to the residents.
Thanks. The one concern I've had, especially with the resurfacing of Huron at just east of Telegraph in this last year, I didn't notice too many no-through or detour signs, which caused the northeast corner, it'd be the southeast corner of Indian Village to be quite beat up. Cars are zooming through. Of course, this is an incredibly busy intersection, and there are very common cut-throughs through Ogama, Mohawk, Boston, Delaware. Delaware is in absolute horrible disrepair. If there were patch jobs that were done, they're gone, especially, thank you, and this is, I'm saying thank you for the stepped up snow maintenance, but we know that's going to be an even worse scenario come spring. So I'd really love to see more use of no-through and signs, so that way we eliminate some of those residential cut-through areas.
And this was a project on Huron?
Correct.
Okay, so that's an MDOT project.
I understand.
We will coordinate with MDOT and
Yeah,
make sure that they...
that'd be great. Yeah.
don't allow cut-through on
Yeah,
the road.
I think, sometimes we lose sight when it's an MDOT project, yet it's affecting our residential streets. And then the last piece, I heard during a planning meeting not too long ago that the signal and sign upgrades on Orchard Lake is part of a larger project. Or will we see more of those those nice LED signs, backlit LED signs across the city?
I don't know that it's part of a larger project, but there's more of those types of projects that we are pursuing. So we started off with Baldwin and MLK a couple years ago. Did Orchard Lake last year. We've also got plans for Walton next year and then Auburn next year as well. We're pursuing Montcalm and other corridors as well. So yeah,
Great.
it's not one large project, but it's projects that we are pursuing.
Yeah, I really think it brings us, it elevates those boulevards, and it's very nice.
Yeah.
That concludes. Councilwoman James, you have the floor.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. First, the information that you showed about Columbia, was that a resurface or was that going to be a rebuild?
That's a resurface, so that will be repairs to the existing concrete. To some extent, we're not reconstructing, we're not tearing it all out, and then we'll be overlaying it with asphalt, and that should be a 12-year fix or so. But there's future considerations there of possibly extending Columbia over to Telegraph. That's something to think about when we come to the next round of construction on that road.
Well, Columbia is in extremely bad shape.
I understand, yes.
And it's currently concrete. So you're saying you're going to clean out the concrete and put down asphalt? Why wouldn't you use the roller, the compacted concrete that you just talked about, the new method?
Unfortunately, not a lot of contractors offer that right now. So right now, there's only one contractor in the state that offers it. They're out on the west side. They came in specially for the project on Vanguard to showcase to us as well as other communities in the area as well. But we're hoping to get more. We're continuing to put that method out on our bids as alternates, and hoping to get contractors interested in it to start purchasing the equipment necessary and adopt that technique as well.
What's the estimated lifespan for the roller method?
I mean, it's typical concrete. It would be 15 to 20 years. Yeah, I think actually looking at it, I think it'll probably go longer.
Columbia has been in the condition that it's in for probably 12 years or more.
Right.
And to fix it, and it only has a lifespan of 12 years, we don't.
Well, let me say this. So Columbia the project's already been awarded. They'll hit the ground first thing running. First thing running in the spring. I can't guarantee that Columbia is the first street they're going to get on, because Cherry Hill, Starlight, Fairmount, Columbia, Bynum, Gambrell, all those streets are part of one project, so they're going to schedule their work in the most efficient way.
President Pro Tem Carrington, you have the floor.
Thank you, President McGinnis. Just one quick question concerning how do you determine priority, as you see from everybody sitting here in different districts. I don't want to echo everyone else, but I'm definitely concerned with some roads in District 6. But my question is around priority, and how do you determine that? Because I definitely want to see a fair process. I don't want to be the loudest person screaming from the podium about a street.
Right.
So if you had a process and how you prioritize, then I think the citizens can understand it a little better than us one-on-one screaming about the streets in our particular district.
Yeah, and so I think a lot of the streets in the city there's a rating system for pavement condition, and so it's 1 to 10, 10 being the best, 1 being the worst. A lot of streets are down at 1, 2, 3, you can really throw a dart at the map and select a street to work on, right? But as far as priorities, I think the number one priority is what will get us external funding, right? So there's not every street, a lot of the external funding or the grants are competitive. So a lot of our streets don't score very well. The ones that do score well, those are the ones that we put forward for that sort of those sort of projects, for those funding opportunities, right? Then as far as our Act 51 funds that we already have, those we look for opportunities to bundle projects like we're doing with Golf Drive and Bagley. They're very close together, both in poor condition. We're able to take care of, take advantage of contractors' efficiencies in pricing and schedule and doing their work to bundle those together. Same thing with like Cherry Hill, Starlight, Fairmount, West Columbia. They're all very in close proximity to each other and so on. So I can't say that there's a formal process right now in place, but we will work on establishing one.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to give the floor to Deputy Mayor Stevens for context, but we have Councilman Parker and Councilman Goodman for a second time.
Yeah, no, so just very quickly to follow up on what Mr. Siddiqui said, we actually have a meeting that's scheduled with administration to specifically talk about the capital improvement plan and process, to go over all of those street ratings, all of the ways that we get funding from external sources, looking at the usage of the streets by volume, looking at other conditions, and then saying out of all of the activities across the city for and not just streets, right? So capital improvement, we're looking at this, we're looking at the streets, we're looking at the parks, we're looking at buildings that the city owns, and saying out of all of these items, out of all of the areas that we can get external funding and how they're used, how do we prioritize what we can get fixed? So that is a whole process that's being put in place. Every community has some form of doing a capital improvement plan. We are, as the mayor has said, 30 days in, but we've made it a priority to say, hey, we really need to step up our game on how we're looking at this strategically.
Thank you. Councilman Parker, you have the floor.
Thank you again. I just want to make mention, though, in addition to all that you've heard, if you could possibly take a look at Pontiac Trail, I believe, right in front of the Secretary of State's place location, when you're
Pontiac
turning the
Road.
corner off Jocelyn.
Pontiac Road.
Pontiac Road.
Okay.
That road right there in front of the Secretary of State's office, it seems to be problematic in that when you make that turn, you're almost into the grass, and the cars that's coming. Also, if you could check out the light at Walton and Giddings, that's an accident waiting to happen because the lights change and people don't pay attention. And sometimes I've been sitting there sometimes, and early in the morning, on the turn light, it only allows about 3 cars to get through, and a lot of people run the light.
Okay. Yeah, we'll take a look at it. Walton and Giddings, correct?
Walton and Giddings, right there back next to the school.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Goodman, you have the floor.
So my last question is, I guess, to clarify, what is the process that is currently in place, and please tell me if I'm barking up the wrong tree, for communicating these projects to the affected residents, who will, of course, inevitably have their commute messed with in some way?
Right. So typically we publish an announcement ahead of the construction start on city's website and social media. We could also arrange public meetings. It's not something we typically do, but we could adopt that procedure as well.
Given the fact that I've noticed that most residents aren't exactly as involved when looking at our city's website, which is a thing within itself, as well as checking our social media, I think there can be and has to be some better way of communicating this to residents, whether it be by the city sending out mail to specifically affected areas. Because again, so in the cases in my district with Columbia, with Kennett, with Cherry Hill, there are people who live directly on these streets who, again, something major is going to be happening in their area. So I think finding a better way of communicating this other than I put it on the website or I posted on a wall in City Hall, we should take it a step further to make sure that the residents know what's happening.
Yeah, we'll do that.
Thank you. And that's part of the reason why we're having this discussion this evening. I thank the mayor and his administration for bringing these. It's important for this council and our community to have a sense of the exciting improvements that are coming, but also the very legitimate challenges that we're faced with. We, more than most any other community in our region, okay, I'll just say Oakland County. In Oakland County, Pontiac is acutely suffering from deteriorating infrastructure. It's the perk of being so historic and awesome is that we have very historic infrastructure as well, that even if it has been upgraded, that upgrade is now a senior citizen in and of itself. So I thank the administration. Deputy Mayor, that was very excellent in terms of not only sharing what the ranking system is for these roads that have different classifications and different funding opportunities as a result. I think it's very helpful for us as a community to go in clear-eyed to know what we're contending with. But we welcome every community member's feedback on any infrastructure or deterioration that you notice. Please report it either to your council member, use the reporting systems that we're looking forward to the administration strengthening and making more user-friendly. But every time that you can report a missing streetlight or stop sign or giant, sinkhole in the world, please let City Hall know so that way we can get that in the pipeline, literally and figuratively. Any other discussion on this special presentation? Hearing nothing further, on a final note, I just want to emphasize the mayor and the city engineer shared with us that 1 week ago, this council passed a resolution emphasizing the concerns we had with safety at Woodward and South Boulevard, and they literally within hours were lobbying the state of Michigan to move that process up, and they were able to successfully secure that. So I want to thank the mayor, the city engineer, and the administration for hearing that feedback. I know you already felt it, but acting quickly because it is a delicate dance with the many other municipalities in the region, let alone the state, who are clamoring for that same approval and the same funding. So it's a very competitive process, but we thank you for this presentation and more to come. Yes, Mayor Grimley, you have the floor.
I want to thank council for really great feedback. This has been really, really helpful for us to help fine-tune the process by which we prioritize roads. I really appreciate your point, Councilman Goodman, about doing a better job of communicating with residents and, for that matter, businesses too, along affected roadways. So this has been really, really helpful for us to get this feedback, and we'll certainly incorporate it into our processes moving forward. So thank you all.
Thank you. With that, we are now at recognition of elected officials. Are there any elected officials here this evening that wish to be recognized? I see that we have former Mayor Deirdre Waterman, the Honorable Mayor Emeritus Waterman. Thank you for your service to the community. Former Councilwoman and Council President Waterman, happy recent birthday, and thank you for your service to the community. We had President of the Pontiac School Board, Gil Garrett, was with us, and he may be back in the chamber shortly. But hearing no elected officials, we now move to resolutions. Pardon me, Mr. President Pro Tem, are there agenda address requests?
Yes, President McGinnis. First we have Chuck Johnson, demolition.
Thank you very much, Chuck Johnson here. You know, a friend of mine asked me why was I wasting so much energy on why the council should have to think about awarding a contract to someone that may or may not be able to do the work. It's my position at this point that the council should go ahead and move forward whatever you're desirable to get the blight out of our city. And we can't be concerned, or I can't be concerned, about whether a contractor can do the work or not. It's up to the council and the mayor to theorize that at a later date and time. So it's my hope that you approve this contract for whatever purposes you desire. But I don't even know why I wasted my time with it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Linda Watson, are you agenda address or are you for public comment? Okay, yes, ma'am. Dr. Deirdre Waterman, Blight Project.
Good evening, everyone. Good to be back with you. I've been in a little bit of a sabbatical. I actually came for public comment, but I saw this blight was on the agenda, so I thought I'd address that as well for agenda address. only to say that I'm happy to see that you're getting this done. Chuck, if I know you were going to come up, I wouldn't even have spoke to it. But I want to say I've been happy to see how well the council is working together in unity with the mayor. It's music to my eyes, and things that you are getting over the finish line. The previous council started, but this is one of the things. You know, we started batch 17, which is this batch right now, back in a year and a half ago. Got delayed because of COVID. Took a little longer to get this batch done. But with this batch now, that actually concludes the Bright Light project, which we started back in 2014 as I became mayor with batch 1, and we did about 2 batches a year. But that was, we identified the blight was a serious problem in the community, which was causing arson fires, just pock-marketed communities and neighborhoods with burnout, desolate, rat-and-foden houses. And we just wanted to make sure that that was a project that got done. That was one of the legacy projects of the last 8 years. And so you're going to get that over the finish line today. By getting that last batch done that we started as part of that project. And this is unusual because this batch is the first batch that has commercial projects, which is good to have done. But I just wanted to have us say to thank you all for getting this over the finish line, and to say thank you, Mayor Grimo, also for what you've done. You sent me the gift in the inauguration, and they called today and said it was going to be delivered next week, so I appreciate that. On my hand, I've done everything I could to make sure this was a smooth transition so you could move on, council, to take on the projects and the get a two attitude that's so wonderful to see. You mentioned Giddings Road, by the way, and I might just mention, having heard that conversation, one of the things the ARP money can be used for, the $37 million, is if road
Waterman.
projects with water. So
That concludes your agenda address period. Thank you. President Pro Tem?
That concludes agenda address, sir.
Thank you. And a question was asked, we have recognition of elected officials. There is another elected official category in our city and in the state of Michigan. It's called precinct delegates. And that is an elected office that residents can pursue. We currently have 21 precincts in the state. Because of our council rules, which the state does not allow utilization of council meetings for campaigning, those positions are partisan. You can either be a Republican Party precinct delegate or a Democratic Party precinct delegate. So that's why it makes it inherently those positions are for campaigning and for elections. But we do acknowledge and appreciate those community members, including Ms. Veronica Taylor, who serves as a precinct delegate within our city, and those are up for election every 2 years. I just want to answer that question since some were asked. That's why we can't necessarily interact on the recognition of elected officials front. Is just the nature of those positions, but we acknowledge and appreciate their commitment to the civic discourse in Pontiac. We're now at resolutions, building and safety. We had postponed for 1 week a motion, so we still have a motion that's before us. So, Mayor and Administration, for the latest context, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. We've discussed this at length last meeting, but I'll allow either the deputy mayor or Mr. Wilson to elaborate further.
Good evening, everyone. I appreciate your time this evening. So we're at batch 17. I would like batch 17 to move forward, so I can say we've finished with our demolition project. Batch 17, there's 2 properties on it that come off. 124, which the State Historic Preservation Office says we cannot demolish. So and we talked about that last week, that we're going to use the line item of demolition under community and economic development to take that one down. And then 778, the owner is University. The owner has to be here by the 11th to finish the entering into that agreement to rehabilitate it and pay those fees. So that's where we're at.
Thank you. Mayor, Administration, and I apologize for this question. If you don't know immediately, you can research it further, but obviously many properties have been condemned in our city over the years. Do we have a sense of the number of currently condemned properties, setting aside this particular batch, but that we're contending with? Doesn't mean that they will result in demolition, and hopefully many more can be brought back back onto the tax rolls and of useful benefit to the community. But just want to hear this, how big of a monster are we dealing with here as a community?
We are right around 36 properties still left that we're contending with. There are some that were that had city council resolutions that may or may not have been rehabilitated in the way they should have been, that are occupied and have been occupied for a number of years. So we're not certainly going to go after those properties. But I think there's about 36. And then on the 23rd of this month, we have another Board of Appeals hearing that may or may not add, 2 to 4, maybe half a dozen.
Thank you. And my understanding is what's before this council right now is ultimately proceeding with this bid for the demolition contractor. And as you've indicated, they were bidding on this initial list of addresses, and that's where the price point came in. But since it's obviously this is particularly longer than usual, in that period of time, there might be changes to some of those addresses as circumstances change with those properties, correct?
That is correct, yes. So the two that come off, so that'll reduce that cost. The contractor has said they will hold their price for this. So what they bid is what they bid, and the houses that they get, they'll hold that price that they bid.
And you'll see in the bid packages, it lists the property, so per property, what that demolition price tag came in from other bidders, but the awarded bidder as well. I'm impressed and grateful that this particular contractor has held that price because this has been a long time.
Yes.
Other council members that wish to have the floor? Councilwoman Rutherford?
I just want to thank you for doing your due diligence about 778 University. I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, the speaker's list being exhausted, on the motion before us, which is approval of resolution demolition services contract for CDBG Batch 17 Demolition Properties International Construction, Inc. Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Nicholson,
Yes.
Parker,
Yes.
Rutherford,
Yes.
Carrington,
Yes.
Goodman,
Yes.
James,
Yes.
McGinnis.
Yes.
7 yeas, no nays.
That motion carries. Is there a motion to approve the resolution acknowledging Pontiac AMVETS Post 101 and VFW Post 1370 for contribution to POW Committee of Michigan?
I make the motion.
Second.
I'm going to act like I didn't say that,
Like
and I didn't hear those motions because my eyeballs skipped over item number 2 of business. Is there a motion to approve the council resolution acknowledging February as Black History Month?
I make the motion.
Support Carrington.
It's been moved by Councilwoman Rutherford and seconded by President Pro Tem Carrington that we approve this resolution, the motion being before us. Any colleagues that wish to have the floor? Councilwoman Rutherford and then Councilman Goodman.
Black history is history every day. I think it's important that we engage and we inspire us by the trials and tribulations of our ancestors, me being a black woman, but most importantly that we inspire other nationalities to celebrate this with us. So I'm challenging you to go to minority-owned businesses, buy stuff like today. This outfit I have on is from EK Essentials, which is owned by Miss Kathy Davis, an African-American woman who is a proud business owner in the city of Pontiac. Your money, your revenue, your patience, your time can inspire a nation. So Black History Month rocks. Thank you.
Councilman Goodman, you have the floor.
Yeah. So I think that this resolution is extremely important to do because even to this day, people of African descent are persecuted constantly. And while we still have a point in our history where men and women are being, at this point, just straight up murdered without due process in a country that screams, innocent until proven guilty, shows us that we still have a lot of work to still do. And, every February we have this conversation about, what are the amazing things that the Black and African American community has contributed to our society, as if our existence is contingent upon us being able to provide something. And I think that it's extremely important for us to talk about the positivity and the fact that we have, that the Black community has triumphed over so much adversity. but it's important to have resolutions and conversations like these because we talk about how people have overcome adversity, but not about the adversity itself. And some people have even tried to remove that discussion.
Okay.
So I think this resolution is a great first step when talking about this. And hopefully there are many more steps after this that go to solidify the fact that this is a thing that we do care about and that we will actively be allies in the fight for racial justice.
Thank you. Others that wish to have the floor? Mayor Grimel.
Well, I'm really glad that City Council brought this resolution forward and that we're celebrating Black History Month. It's critically important to bring additional focus to history that all too often has been underrepresented and not sufficiently discussed or celebrated in our country. I do want to challenge all of us to celebrate Black history throughout the entire year, not just during February, and to treat Black history in the way it ought to be treated, which is as an integral part of American history. And so while we celebrate Black History Month in February of every year, let's redouble our efforts to celebrate it the other 11 months of the year as well.
Stay woke. You bet.
Thank you. There has been a request for Clerk Doyle to read the language of this resolution, but I want to allow conversation further. I want to share for the community that it's just been announced that the home of Malcolm X, which is located in Inkster, Michigan, has just been approved as a historic site or an additional layer of historic designation, and they will be opening a museum at that home of Malcolm X and his family. And in this very chamber, Milton Henry, who was the first African American elected to what was the Pontiac City Commission, essentially the predecessor of this Pontiac City Council. So he sat in this very chamber. I don't know which chair, not this literal chair, but I don't know what seat, but he was in this chamber, in this city hall, and not only was he a brilliant legal scholar and a civil rights activist in and the nation, but he was also an extremely close associate of Malcolm X. So just want to share that connection, which when we worked on this resolution, I want to salute President Pro Tem Carrington for doing a great deal of work on this resolution. We intentionally were trying to center Pontiac's very important context in the broader celebration and struggle of Black history. So hearing no further discussion, if you could, Mr. Clerk, read the language of the resolution as a council member has requested.
Pontiac City Council resolution recognizing February as Black History Month. Whereas the city of Pontiac, Michigan has had a substantial population of African American residents for its entire existence as a city since the state of Michigan recognized Pontiac as a city in 1861. Whereas in 1915, Dr. Carter Goodwin Whitson, noted scholar and son of former slaves who founded the Association for the Study of African American Life and History, initiated Black History Week, February 12, 1926, which was celebrated for many years by African Americans in the United States. Whereas the month of February is now observed nationally as Black History Month to recognize and celebrate the accomplishments of African Americans have made and continue to offer to this nation. Whereas since 1976, every president of the United States has adopted the month of February as Black History Month, an annual celebration of African American achievements and roles in United States history. Whereas Black History Month acknowledges the honors numerous past and present educators, scientists, activists, pioneers, leaders, artists, inventors, entrepreneurs, and elders with special ceremonies and activities. Whereas Black History Month is also a time to reflect on the burdens of racial prejudice and explore, understand, and appreciate the identities and cultures across and within the African diaspora. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Pontiac City Council declares February 2022 as Black History Month in the city of Pontiac, Michigan, and further resolved that the City Council honors the contributions, sacrifices made in building pride in Black history lost my place, felt like the mic. In educating all Americans on the many achievements and contributions made by African Americans to our cultural, spiritual, economic, and political development, and further resolve that the Pontiac City Council joins other organizations throughout the state of Michigan and this nation in using this occasion to raise awareness of the hardships African Americans have endured, celebrate the milestones that have been achieved, continue the pursuit toward equal treatment under the law, the opportunity of access for African Americans in other communities and nationally, and further resolve that the City Council acknowledges the injustice that African Americans have endured, commends African American residents for the continuous pursuit of overcoming those injustices and changing the course of history, and further resolve we honor the leaders and activists from Pontiac and throughout the nation who helped pave the way for racial justice and called our community's attention to the continued need to battle racism and to build an equitable society, and further resolve the City Council welcomes additional opportunities for us as a community to better acknowledge, celebrate, and preserve the people's places, events, and organizations that constitute Pontiac's phenomenal local black history. Pontiac City Council, Pontiac, Michigan, February 1st, 2022.
Hearing no further discussion on approval of the resolution, roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Parker.
Yes.
Rutherford,
Yes.
Carrington,
Yes.
Goodman,
Yes.
James,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Nicholson.
Yes.
7 yeas, no nays.
That motion carries. Can I please have a motion to approve the resolution acknowledging the Pontiac AMVETS Post 101 and VFW Post 1370 for contribution to POW Committee of Michigan?
Moved by Carrington.
Support.
It's been moved by President Pro Tem Carrington, seconded by Councilman Parker. We have a motion before us now. I want to give the floor first to Councilman Goodman, as both of those posts are located at 800 Cesar Chavez Avenue in District 3.
Yeah, so I won't speak too much at length. I'll actually leave that to one of my colleagues up here. Thank you so much for the work that was done to, donate this money to this fund. It is an extremely important part, especially with the fact that I had multiple family members who have served, including in Vietnam. And I think it's extremely important that we recognize, uplift, and also, actually help the veterans of our country, especially here in the city of Pontiac. But with that being said, I would like to yield the rest of mine to Councilman Parker.
Thank you, Councilman Goodman. And I just want to say thank you to the AMVETS Post 101 and VFW Post 1370 for their contribution. Having served myself and having family members that have served, and some who have lost their lives for the defense of this country and what we believe in, I certainly appreciate all the efforts that the individuals, groups make to make sure that all of those who are missing return home. Currently, there is about 83,000 still missing and unaccounted for in all the wars that we have fought. Michigan has approximately 48 of those still missing. And so I pray that we will find those or come up with those, and some are just, I doubt we ever will, but certainly we appreciate every effort. We certainly appreciate they do the yellow ribbons, annual yellow ribbon ceremony to raise money to support that endeavor. I also want to just thank them for their effort, their continued efforts in what they do, not only for those who are lost, but those who are still here and struggling with the effects of what war does to the mind, the body, and the spirit. Thank you.
Thank you. Others that wish to have the floor? Hearing no further discussion, speakers list exhausted. Roll call on the resolution to approve. Mr. Clerk.
Rutherford,
Yes.
Carrington,
Yes.
Goodman,
Yes.
James,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Nicholson,
Yes.
Parker.
Yes.
7 yeas, no nays.
That motion carries. Is there a motion to approve the resolution advocating for strengthened transportation options for Pontiac and nearby communities?
So moved.
It's been moved by Councilman Goodman, seconded by Councilman Parker. We now have that motion before us. Discussion on the resolution. Councilman Goodman.
So I think it's important that we brought this forth. For those of you who may not know, the city of Auburn Hills will be discussing soon the possibility of opting out of SMART, which is the transportation system that most of us use who ride the bus here in the city. And to kind of be preemptive of this, as a person who was a student in the city of Pontiac who did not have a car, a person who didn't have a car regardless of being a student who had to ride the bus back and forth between work and high school to get groceries, I understand firsthand the importance of public transportation in Oakland County, but specifically Southeast Michigan, of course, Michigan as a whole. And doing that would adversely affect many lives here in the city of Pontiac. And I thought that it would be an amazing idea for the city of Pontiac to make a resolution essentially politely encouraging our neighbor to not leave the SMART system, as many of our residents depend on it, as well as many of their own residents depend on it. I mean, for the fact that as of January of this past year, the bus routes that connect Pontiac and Auburn Hills to Oakland University, Oakland Community College, Stellantis, which used to be the Chrysler Building, downtown Auburn Hills, Great Lakes Crossing, as well as the Meyer on Brown Road, are all very dependent upon these Auburn Hills routes. And the possibility of Auburn Hills opting out could, again, greatly and adversely affect many residents here in the city of Pontiac. So, again, to encourage them not to leave, I decided it would be a great idea to bring forth this resolution, again, kind of solidifying our polite encouragement for them to consider, one, their own residents and their approval of SMART, as well as the regions and areas that heavily rely upon it being in place.
Thank you. Others that wish to have the floor? Mayor Grimel.
Thank you, Councilman Goodman, for bringing this resolution forward. You and I have talked several times, I think it's fair to say, in the past few weeks about this. It is, in fact, really important. If Auburn Hills were to withdraw from SMART, as Councilman Goodman already expressed and explained, it would have a direct negative effect on our residents. I've had conversations with the county executive about it. I know that his office is encouraging Auburn Hills to stay in the SMART system. I've already begun having conversations with Auburn Hills elected officials along the same lines, and as I continue to have those conversations, having this resolution in hand helps show Auburn Hills that we have a united front here in Pontiac, that we all share the concern about what that sort of short-sighted decision would mean for our residents as we collectively seek to persuade Auburn Hills to do the right thing and stay in the SMART transportation system. So thank you all.
Thank you. Others that wish to have the floor? Hearing no further discussion on the motion before us, speakers list exhausted. Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Harrington,
Yes.
Goodman,
Yes.
James,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Nicholson,
Yes.
Parker,
Yes.
Rutherford.
Yes.
7 yeas, no nays.
That motion carries. We're now at an item being brought back. It was postponed for 1 week by this body at last week's council meeting. It's the approval of the council resolution which approves the City Council Code of Ethics. So it's been before us for a bit. It's been deliberated. It was brought up last week, but just for the community and this council's benefit, upon the anticipated event where a code of ethics or an ethics ordinance that is encompassing for the entire city staff, the mayor, the council, our staff and contractors here at City Hall, that we will likely revisit this, and so that way it mirrors and works on that same front and allows for greater enforceability through that future ordinance action. So just wanted to bring that context to light, which hopefully is fully understood. Mayor Grimel, anything further you wanted to elaborate on that? Thank you. Council members that wish to be recognized. Hearing no further discussion, speakers list is exhausted. We now shall move into roll call for approval of the council resolution approving the City Council Code of Ethics.
Goodman,
Yes.
James,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Nicholson,
Yes.
Parker,
Yes.
Rutherford,
Yes.
Harrington.
Yes.
7 yeas, no nays.
Thank you. We're now at the Department of Public Works. Is there and this is our first time doing it in this body, now Councilman Carrington and I have done this many times when we were on the school board, where we'd vote to combine items of business in one fell swoop. So I'm counting on somebody, AKA the clerk, or somebody else to say, don't do it that way if it's not in keeping with how the council normally would. But is there a motion to combine items which are now 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10? Because when we amended the agenda, we moved those numbers down. Is there a motion to combine items 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, so that way there is a motion to approve those items of business in one motion?
I make the motion.
I'll support.
It's been moved by Councilwoman Rutherford and seconded by President Pro Tem Carrington. Procedurally, I want to give Legislative Counsel Sharp and the clerk the opportunity to tell me, don't do it that way.
It's appropriate.
So it's been moved and seconded with that. So we have approval of these respective resolutions. Now before us, want to give, and for the community's benefit, it essentially is multiple professional engineering services, different itemized contracts, but covering the same context or book of business, if you will. Mayor Greimel, administration, context on these respective resolutions.
Thank you, Mr. President. So if you're like me, you're probably wondering, why do we have so many engineering contracts with so many different firms? Because that's a question I asked a couple of weeks ago. And I'll let Mr. Siddiqui get into all the details, but the crux of it is this, that first of all, we don't incur any expenses, costs, or expenditures with any of these contracts unless we actually utilize their services. So this is just engaging in a contract with engineering companies so that if we need their services, we have set pricing and we can go to them. Now, why utilize more than one engineering company? Different engineering companies have different expertises. Some of them have more efficient approaches to different kinds of projects than others, and since we're billed on an hourly basis, it's nice to be able to shop around to different engineering firms to see who's able to do the work in the most efficient, shortest amount of time so that we can actually conserve costs. So it gives us some flexibility in terms of finding the most competent firm for a given project, the highest quality, but also trying to make sure that we're finding firms that are the most efficient and take the least amount of time to do the task needed so that we incur fewer charges that are ultimately borne by the city and our taxpayers. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Siddiqui.
So I don't really have much more to add to that. I mean, the mayor covered that very well. I guess if anyone has any questions on the engineering services contracts, just feel free to ask.
Those that wish to be recognized, Councilman Nicholson, then Rutherford.
I imagine along the same lines as the 1 year contract is to, or is this a typical time span 1 year contract, or is it for
so we
getting to know them and?
Well, so we've had them under contract for 5 years.
Right, as far as the new administration.
Oh.
Yeah, I think we wanted to extend the contracts, get a sense as to how this procedure works. It sounds like it's worked fairly well in recent years, but rather than enter into long-term contracts, we thought we'd enter into 1 year contracts so that we as a new administration can get a feel for how this arrangement works before we enter into longer-term contracts.
The Great Lakes Power and Light was the lease they would give us was 2.
Well, so actually not, but and that's a separate agenda item because that hasn't been consolidated, is my understanding. So we can, I don't want to breach any rules of order, Mr. President.
No.
But we can talk separately at the next agenda item about why that's a 2 year contract as opposed to a 1 year contract.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Rutherford.
How many minority companies are part of these engineering contracts?
So I'll have to go back and look. I know at least one of those is minority owned. Which is Alfred Benish and Company.
Could you repeat that?
Alfred Benish and Company is minority owned. I'll have to look at the status of the other 4.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilwoman James, you have the floor.
Yes, I wanted to just say that this would come under the Parks, Recreation, and Public Works Subcommittee. When we had our meeting in January, most of the issues that we dealt with were the park issues. But the February meeting, we will focus on Public Works, and that committee will be looking at all 5 of these contracts and getting a little more detail in terms of what is being done by each one of these vendors. Just wanted to say that.
Thank you. Others that wish to have the floor? So we're dealing with Alfred Benish and Company, Anderson, Eckstein, and Westrick, Hubble, Roth and Clark. They are very shorthand for HRC these days. Nowak and Fraus, which is physically located in the city of Pontiac, correct? And NTH Consultants Ltd. Mayor Administration, is it fair to say that any of these one-year contracts that are before us, they're in the similar wheelhouse, or are there some that deal specifically with a type of work, or the city has in recent years utilized some of these firms for a specific purpose?
Yeah, I defer to Mr. Siddiqui, who can speak in greater detail to that.
So, Alfred Benish and Company, which we just call Benish, HRC, Nowak and Fraus, and AEW, Anderson, Eckstein, and Westrick. These are more general civil engineering firms. NTH Consultants is more specialized in environmental and geotechnical work, and so they handle our Collier Road landfill closure processes, the reporting and investigations that need to be done there. The other companies, typically we go to for general engineering work. So, like Nowak and Fraus, there's some items they don't do, such as structural engineering and others. Alfred Benish doesn't do architecture. So each company has their strengths and weaknesses, as the mayor mentioned.
These are essentially routine contract approvals. Administration is being very thoughtful and courteous to allow us the opportunity to have 2 weeks of review and consideration, but I've heard from some colleagues that there may be interest for these one-year contracts to proceed this evening. Any sense from colleagues if you'd like to postpone for 1 week to allow further review, or if you'd like to pull the trigger tonight?
Like, I'll make a motion to suspend the rules and.
Well, that would be in order, except we don't have any rules that prevent it. So we can, we have the motion before us right now. The discussion, sort of parentheses after it, or sort of like recommendations, or sort of an indicator.
So our council rules, though, do recommend that things be brought to the council for a review. And
we discussed that when we were considering the council rules, but there is no language that prevents action on the first time we hear it.
I think it's good.
I'll make a motion to approve items, the contract extensions.
We do have a motion and a second before us right now. And so if there's no motion to postpone, we will go to a vote. Just want to make sure that my colleagues were comfortable with that, since it does speed up rather than have 2 weeks of deliberation. I think we've got a sense that is the direction that this body would like to go in. Any further discussion on these 5 items of approval? We've already motioned to approve them in one fell swoop. Hearing no further discussion, speakers list exhausted, we now move into roll call of approval of those respective resolutions. Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
James.
Yes.
McGinnis.
Yes.
Nicholson.
Yes.
Parker.
Yes.
Rutherford.
Yes.
Carrington.
Yes.
Goodman.
Yes.
7 yeas, no nays.
Did I vote? I don't remember.
No.
Oh, if I did, yes again. So that was seven yeas. Motion carries. Thank you. So those 5 items of business having been resolved, we are now at the new number 11. Previously in the printed agenda's 10, resolution to approve. Is there a motion to approve the resolution to approve a 2-year contract extension with Great Lakes Power and Light for street light maintenance?
I make the motion.
It's been moved by Councilwoman Rutherford, seconded by Councilwoman James. Properly moved and seconded motion before us. For context, administration and mayor, you have the floor.
I'll begin just by answering a question that people often ask, which is what lights are under the city's jurisdiction versus under DTE's jurisdiction. And as a general proposition, if it's on a wood utility pole, it's under DTE's jurisdiction. So that is not what we're talking about here. These are actual street lights that run along at least city jurisdiction roads, and they're almost always attached to metal poles. And so those are the lights that we're talking about in this instance for this contract. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Siddiqui to talk more about the nature of the contract and why it's for a 2-year term.
Right, so as the mayor mentioned, any light poles in the city, even if they're on MDOT roads or, well, there's no county roads in the city, but even if they're on MDOT routes that are on aluminum poles, are the city's responsibility. Now, this contract, we've had this contractor on board for streetlight maintenance, which includes the poles, the fixtures, as well as the underground infrastructure as well, so the conduits and the wiring and all that. We've had them under contract for a few years now, and they've built up a lot of institutional knowledge. They know a lot about our system. It's very quick for them to identify issues and resolve them, whereas if we were to go out and procure a new contractor at this point, there would be a lot of learning that would have to happen and a lot of delays associated with that. So that's why, so we're going with the 2-year contract here because we're hoping to potentially insource some of these services, and this will give us some time to plan for that.
Thank you. Those that wish to be recognized? Councilman Nicholson.
I've been on a couple of missions with a few other members in the Main Street group and collecting lights that are out and poles that are damaged or poles that aren't secured. I've shown a few to the mayor in the past. Each time we bring these forward, it seems the answer that I get is that research has to be done to find out who's responsible for these, or that we're on it, and then we go back and see that maybe about a quarter each time of these light bulbs are replaced, or whether it's wiring issues or the one behind 85 North Saginaw still sways in the breeze. So I'm nervous to say yes, because I'm not sure whether or not this is that the city isn't following through with this contract, or the contract is not working well for us.
So I will say the contractor is not in the city 24/7. They do have other clients as well. So compared to other contractors that we might get, I think their service is more reasonable, considering the amount of institutional knowledge that they have built up. They come in, I believe, and don't quote me on this, but I believe once a week or so into the city and take care of, our complaints as well. So it's not a substitute for in-housing, obviously. If we had 24/7 staff in-house to do the work, I think you'd see a lot better quality of service.
So 2 years is the lowest contract agreement that we could get with them?
We could go back and talk to them about 1 year, but I think the preference is 2 years because we're not ready to insource right now. There are other priorities for insourcing.
Thank you.
Mayor Greimel, and then President Pro Tem Carrington and Councilwoman Rutherford.
First of all, I share your concerns, Councilman Nicholson, and I know we have talked a number of times about one pole in particular, maybe others. And I know it's been a number of months since we talked about that. So now that I'm in office, as these concerns come up, please let me know directly, or Deputy Mayor Stevens know directly, and we will do everything in our power to hound the contractor, to hold them accountable, and to make sure they're actually doing their job. To Mr. Siddiqui's point, there's a broader issue here about outsourcing this work, because any contractor that we use is not going to be around the city all the time, and it's one of the reasons, both issues of quality and cost, that we're comprehensively looking at all of our contracted services to see what we can bring back in-house. A lot of these services were done in-house once upon a time, historically, but the emergency managers especially privatized a lot of this work, outsourced a lot of this work. We're doing a comprehensive review to see what of this work it makes sense to bring back in-house. As Mr. Siddiqui said, having some of this work, especially for lighting in-house, would allow us to more promptly respond to these requests and make sure that we have more direct control over how promptly it's being addressed. It will take some time to assess what we can bring back in-house and actually implement those plans as we build capacity in-house to make sure that we can actually do that work. And this is just one area where we're looking to bring things back in-house. We could talk about bringing more snow plowing back in-house, road work back in-house. The list goes on and on and on, and that's a broader conversation. But the thought here was, since we're going to be doing an assessment of bringing it back in-house, and since that assessment will probably take at least 6 months to a year, maybe longer, depending on the order in which we try to bring things back in-house, that doing a 2-year contract would be a way to ensure that we have sufficient time to make that analysis, and we're not just coming back a year from now with another 1-year contract pending further investigation into bringing this work in-house.
And I will say that some of the issues that you mentioned, that are lingering, sometimes they're lingering because we have identified the problem. It's just we don't have the budget for the solution.
I think the only thing that we'd be looking for is a response. Right. I mean, if there's a reason why the light bulb's not going to get replaced, we're open to that. We just want to hear the response.
Yeah.
President Pro Tem Carrington, then Councilwoman Rutherford.
Yes, thank you, President McGinnis. First, I'd like to thank the administration for their continued effort to look for ways to bring some of these things back into house. I guess my concern is that from listening to everyone around the table, as well as you at the podium, it seems like one of the issues is the process time. So when you've been told that a light is out, what's the response time for this particular company?
I'll have to go back and look at our records. I'm not familiar with that. Typically, our
Are we talking months?
no, not months, days.
Days.
Yeah.
Okay. And my second question is that, do you actually yearly grade these particular contracts? Basically, you look at them, decide just how well their work is done throughout the year, and do you have some kind of grading process to determine whether the city should continue to enter into contracts with these particular contractors?
So at this point, there's nothing formal in place as a city overall. I think in DPW we do have our conversations on how we feel about certain contractors. So we sort of grade them by committee internally and then recommend extensions. But we will be coming up with some processes and procedures.
All right. So what I'm hearing is that basically the city is going to work on how to determine whether how we grade these contractors on a yearly basis before contracts come to us.
Based on the feedback we're getting, and I think it's great feedback, I'm hearing a few things. Number one, we need to bring some information to council about this particular contractor's responsiveness or response times from when they've actually received complaints. It's possible, of course, that they never actually received some of these complaints historically, so that's something we need to ascertain in terms of the contractor. I'm sure somebody at City Hall got the complaint, but was it ever relayed to the contractor? The other question, to your point, Councilman Carrington, I almost called you by your first name, old habits die hard, but Mr. Pro Tem, in answer to your question, yes, we need to make sure that we have a system by which to assess this contractor and contractors in general. That's going to be part of our review of bringing some of these services back in-house, is how do we assess the quality of these services. Assessing cost is fairly straightforward, although we need to make sure we're taking into account all the costs, but how do we assess the quality of service? And so that's something that we're going to be looking at and evaluating, not just for this contractor, but other contractors as well. And I do want to just emphasize, we don't have a problem doing a 1-year contract if that's something that council is more comfortable with. If we think that that will help ensure better service or provide better accountability for the contractor, we have no problem moving in that direction.
Thank you. Councilwoman Rutherford, you have the floor.
Okay, couple of questions. Water Street, where the light is out every week at the bus station, are they responsible for that?
They are responsible, and they
Okay.
just did a repair a couple of months ago, I believe.
So, no, sir, it's out right now. One of my constituents just texted me that. Number two, because I like to be clear on this, Martin Luther King by White Castle by the bridge, are they responsible for that?
I'll have to look at that.
Okay. Number 3, are they responsible for the one heading where the library is? When you make I don't know, what's that street? I always forget. It's Woodward. That will be Woodward, yes? Are they responsible for that? Because the lights downtown are always out. And I'm worried about the safety of women at night. I'm worried about the safety of people at the bus station. So I initiated it because I want to have this broad discussion about at what point do we get to ask when the lights are going to be out downtown? Because what I've been told as the past, as a citizen, is that it's DTE's issue. That's a DTE light. And what I don't want to do is we give them this contract, and then 2 weeks from now, someone will say, Councilwoman Rutherford in District 1, Water Street light by the bus stop went off, and somebody was attacked because couldn't nobody see nothing.
No, I will tell you, almost every light in downtown is the city's responsibility.
Can you say that again so that the people can hear you?
Almost all the lights in downtown are the city's responsibility.
Mhm.
There are a couple, I think, in alleys that are DTE, but we can identify those for you. There's a couple lights that are not the city's, so we'll identify those and let you know which one those are.
Yes, you still have the floor, Council.
You didn't answer my question. My question is, because he said it earlier. Well, you answered one part, but my other question is, in the event when we have those in those precise places that I just mentioned, where Water Street is, what will be the turnaround? What will be the difference if we give them this contract again? Because I'm worried about the bus stop. That's a real issue.
No, it is, and I think the most recent incident at the bus stop that we repaired within a few days, within a week. And
A few days of when you were notified of.
Of when we were notified. I mean, we got notified by Madonna Van Fossen from Smart about that, and we turned it around really quickly. I can forward you the emails on that. So I wasn't aware that it's been out again, but we'll take a look at it again.
Thank you.
Councilman Goodman for a first time, and then Councilman Nicholson for a second time. Pardon me, James for a first time. The first time addressing in Robert's rules gets preempts. Goodman on the floor.
Okay, at least you got me that far. So the question I'd ask, and it's kind of piggybacking off of what Councilwoman Rutherford said. So again, for the community's benefit, what is the process that currently exists for people to, I guess, tell the city that there are lights out? What is the existing process for that?
It's like any other complaint. I mean, you can complain to your council person. You can come into the DPW office, give us a call, send us an email, let us know, and then we reach out to the contractor.
Okay.
Council, do you object to giving the mayor the opportunity to elaborate further? Mayor Greimel.
Well, I don't have a specific answer to that because, to be honest, we need a better system. And that's not just unique to lighting, it's unique to intake of concerns from residents more broadly. We really don't have a comprehensive and haven't had a comprehensive system as long as I've been active with the city, going back 15 years. There has not been a cohesive, comprehensive system to take in complaints and concerns from residents and then track those concerns and make sure they're resolved. So it is something that we need to put in place. It's something that we've already had discussions about, but we need to make sure that there is a clear system and procedure for intake of concerns, questions, comments from residents, a computer system to track those concerns, following up with departments to make sure that they're getting back and responding to residents via email or by telephone, depending on how they were contacted, and then making sure that those concerns are actually resolved. So it's a very important question, but it's not unique just to lighting. It exists in almost all areas of constituent concerns, because when they're relayed to City Hall, there has not historically been a comprehensive way to track and address those. We're going to change that, but it's a really important question that you raised. I just wanted to note that it's very much on our radar screen, and it's not unique to lighting. It's true in almost every area of city service.
I will say, Tim, I think you might have been around me a little bit too long because you knew that me asking that question would then evolve into, well, what about the other parts of the city? I would say that I think for the city's benefit as well as council's benefit when it comes to discussing these issues, I think that should be a IT structural priority in terms of having a concise, direct way for the citizens to make complaints with the city that can actually be tracked, can be managed, can be updated. I think that is a priority that we should have, especially when we discuss the contracts for the lights that are extremely important.
Yep. Councilwoman James for a first time.
Yeah, I've got a number of concerns as well, and it sounds like...
Point of personal privilege. Is your microphone on, Councilwoman?
Yes, it is.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Can you hear me? It sounds like that possibly we might want to look at a 1 year rather than a 2 year, because we do need to get some understanding of the responsiveness of the, the real job performance of this particular contractor. I've got questions about generally, they do general maintenance, they do preventative maintenance. Mm-hmm. But who actually, where we need a complete haul of that particular light? Something is wrong with it that needs more extensive work. Do they do that as well?
So if we're doing, for example, a road reconstruction project, and we'll typically look at street lighting along there as well, and if the street lighting needs to be rehabbed or reconstructed, our engineers will design that, and then the contractor will build it accordingly. Not this contractor, the contractor who wins the road project.
Okay.
However, if it's a standalone project that needs to be done, this contractor does that as well. If there's any design work that's required, our engineers will do that, and then this contractor will fulfill the work.
Okay. Well, the questions that have come up on council in terms of repetitive outages for the same light do not really indicate that there is a good preventative plan in place. That if they have one, it's not working very well. Right. So I've got some concerns about that as well. I would not be particularly comfortable with going with a 2 year. I think we need to kind of really take a look at this particular consultant to see if we really are getting what we're paying for.
Thank you. Councilman Nicholson for a second time.
The system that is used in code enforcement for submitting complaints, is that only in code enforcement, or is that extend to building and safety and DPW as well?
Mayor Grimel or Deputy Mayor Stevens?
It's only been used in code enforcement.
Okay.
And so it is not a comprehensive system that's been applied in all areas of City Hall. At least that's my understanding. I had this exact conversation about 2 weeks ago around code enforcement, and my sense is that it is not universally used by other city departments. But that's the type of system that we want to make sure that we're, it may not be that specific software or that specific system, but it's the kind of system that we need to use systematically and comprehensively throughout City Hall to make sure that we have a formal way to take in the concerns, track the concerns, and make sure that they're ultimately resolved.
The reason I bring it up, and now that it's not related, the only problem that I have is that in that system there are sometimes multiple categories that are listed, and sometimes they're a bit broad, so it's a little confusing. I recently tried to put in a complaint about garbage, and it said the city is no longer taking complaints of this category. So it's something to look into. I wanted to make sure that it didn't extend to these issues as well.
Before we have a motion to postpone, since I don't think the sense of this council is to act on it tonight, but really when we say, is it them, or is it DTE, it's really, is it DTE or is it us, the taxpayers of Pontiac? There are obligation in our property, and we're contracting for professionals to facilitate it. I'd like to get a better, tighter answer on what historically, or at least in recent history, how internally we're tracking, we're communicating that, and then what the turn times are, because I don't want to penalize one of our few options professionally if, one, it's really that we, as a municipality, can be tighter on tracking, communicating, and then following up to, but in the contract, it shows basically a menu of pricing for needs that may arise. And the most expensive really is if there's a full light pole replacement. Many times those get wiped out by reckless driving, for various different reasons, sometimes weather, sometimes under the influence, that there's a lot of, especially on our major roads, lights that get wiped out by drivers. Is there any track record of the cost that the taxpayers have to incur for that replacement ever being captured, presuming they don't flee, or it's known who done it? But does the administration or any of the team able to give an answer to that? And that's okay if we don't have the answer tonight, but do we ever get made whole on when they knock out one of our lights? Because I think the price tag said $3,600 for a full pole replacement. And I imagine once one's been sliced and it's down, I doubt much, rehabbing. You can't duct tape that one back. So any further elaboration that you can give at this point?
So we do keep track of, obviously, the work orders that we send out to the contractor. So as far as our costs that were, the funds that we're expending on the contractor on any individual incident, that is tracked. I don't know of recent cases that we've gone after vehicles or drivers that have knocked poles down, but I can look into that. I don't know the answer.
Yes, it's a really good point, I think, and we'll look into whether the city has in the past gone after folks. Obviously, it can be difficult to recover and collect from lots of folks, depending on whether they have assets that can be gone after, et cetera. But you're absolutely right that we should at least have a process in place to look at whether it's worthwhile going after folks who actually damage city property through driving off the road, hitting, and it's not just light poles potentially, it's fences. We talked recently about people running into the cemetery, the eastern portion of the Oak Hill Cemetery. So there are lots of scenarios where drivers might run off the road and damage city property, and we should look at the efficacy of going after folks and trying to collect damages so that the responsible driver in that instance is on the hook rather than city taxpayers.
And I will say regarding the fence, we have gone after the insurance of the driver and recoup that cost on replacing the fence. I'm just not aware of if we do that for the light poles or not.
I look forward to that information, and thank you for that, that value statement, that's the direction we want to go in. A follow-up question, and then Councilwoman James for a second time. The ornamental streetlights that are in downtown that I imagine the then DDA did during a streetscape improvement, I think it was like 2007 that they were done, but that major accident that also impacted the Hank Studio that took out one of those sort of ornamental streetlights, would this count in the sort of the menu of cost, or would that be sort of, and would this even be the contractor to do that work, or we essentially, that's done and gone, those type of streetlights? Has this Great Lakes Power and Light, have they done any of the sort of decorative streetlights on Saginaw?
They do install them. We typically order them separately, but they do install them. There's usually a long lead time on those.
And are they more expensive than the traditional aluminum poles?
Yeah.
Okay. Because that could be another instance where I imagine that car couldn't go anywhere, so they might know who the driver was that made impact with the Hank Studio. But that's not the only one. I mean, I really think that our major thoroughfares have really taken a pummeling. I think of Woodward, I think of Huron, just so many aluminum street poles that it's wild how many are currently missing. So while we work to strengthen that internal process for reporting and tracking, we still welcome the community's assistance in identifying those areas, especially in your neighborhood, especially on your street, because no contractor or city employee has as many nighttime eyes on your street as you do. So you will know best if a bulb is out or something as simple and straightforward as that. So use your sort of 24/7 surveillance of your neighborhood, your street corners, and report that to City Hall so we can get that into the pipeline and work to get resolution, because those on the menu of prices are a lot lower. You know, we're not talking a full pole replacement. Yes, sir, and then.
I will just say the residential streets are typically DTE lights. So
Okay.
if they're on wood poles, they're DTE maintained.
But still, that would have to be usually information that we are identifying to
It's
DTE.
flagged to DTE, correct.
Thank you. Councilwoman James for a second time.
Yeah, that would be kind of confusing. I did want to say, though, that there is a streetlight outage report on the city's website. And if you could also give us some kind of an update on how many incidences get reported on that website and how those are responded to. I'd like to be curious to know how many come in there and how those are responded to.
And that would be, I think, helpful information for Great Lakes Power and Light. I mean,
Yeah.
in the most recent contract cycle, how much work did it mean? And if I missed that, I apologize. Councilwoman Rutherford for a second time.
Is there any way we can get someone from this company to come talk to us about their procedure and how their turnaround rate? Because I understand that we are negotiating it, but before we vote on it, is there any way we can get a representative to come talk to us about their turnaround rate?
Possibly.
I didn't hear you.
We'll reach out to them.
Thank you.
And ask them for it.
Hearing no further discussion, is there a motion to postpone for 1 week?
So moved.
Support Carrington.
It's been moved by Councilman Goodman and seconded by President Pro Tem Carrington that this motion be postponed for 1 week until our February 8th, 2022 council meeting. Hearing no discussion on the motion to postpone for 1 week, roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Nicholson,
Yes.
Parker,
Yes.
Rutherford,
Yes.
Harrington,
Yes.
Goodman,
Yes.
James,
Yes.
McGinnis.
Yes.
7 yeas, no nays.
Motion carries. We're now at public comment. President Pro Tem Carrington, you have the floor.
Thank you, President McGinnis. I don't see Kermit Williams. Mrs. Linda Watson?
Thank you to the City Council Mayor, Rimo, and the residents of the City of Pontiac. I'm passing out my speech, so it's rather long. My name is Linda Watson. I'm 28-year retiree. I'm also a member of the CEPRA board and was part of the negotiating team for the court settlement. Currently, I am also the VIVA board trustee. More importantly, I have attended most of the GERD's monthly meetings since 2006 or 7. I would like to present some information and questions that should be considered. During the past year, some trustees have been having discussions and meetings privately to discuss GERDS-related issues, more specifically, how to circumvent and intervene in the court settlement and the $400 permanent benefit increase for retirees. The court settlement order reflects that the temporary $400 benefit is not a part of the court settlement, and that the hospital retirees and the GERDS board are not a party to the settlement. Some trustees have met privately with Mayor Grimo to discuss these issues. Trustees Gidding, Mariani, Moore, and Swayze have sent correspondence regarding these same issues to some retirees. Trustee Moore has recently resigned. Why was the experience study for the $400 paid by a trustee and not the GERDS board. The GERDS board has placed a pause on transferring the monies to the new GERDS and the health care for VIVA Fund. Why were retirees prevented from joining the GERDS November Zoom meeting? Why is the GERDS board continuing to pay the managers of managers for a service which was supposed to be an interim action until the new finance consultant was hired? This expense has been going on for 3 years. Why are 3 of the citizens appointed to the board all from District
Ms. Watson?
5? I can't finish, but there's more to come.
When individuals are speaking, please use the side doors. Now that council is session, please don't enter or exit the doors behind the podium. President Pro Tem Carrington?
Yes, Robert Bass.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Robert Bass, and I have a couple of concerns that I'd like to pass by the board, by the council, as well as the mayor. And my first concern is with the mayor and the leadership of the council. Why is an elected official being allowed to operate their personal business along with their city business in the city building where all the bills are paid with, are supported by community funds? Now, this question is not about an individual. It's not about the elected official. It's about a process that when this was allowed, and by whomever, there was a problem with the process that brings in every district leader in the city, because you're making allowances for something that should not have been done, in our opinion. But also, when we have to ask to utilize buildings that we own, and a lot of times we can't get it, or we've been put out of them due to finances that we don't have, because most of the CDCs, association, block club, they don't take in finance. So when you ask us to pay for a building to use for a meeting, you opt us out of a process that we own. Also, we asked a question of the council, the last council before it left, so I'm gonna put it back to you. What about these no parking signs? Are they temporary or are they permanent? What process was used to put those signs there? Because we weren't asked, nor was there a public hearing for us to come and voice our opinion. Now, if they're permanent or temporary, who paid for them? Did we pay for them, or did anyone pay for them? Those are my questions for you. Thank you so much for your time, and please, I went through a great deal of time not to mention anybody, so that was not for about any individual. It was due process. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Lloyd Gary.
Well, I really appreciate the due process and all the hard work y'all put into everything I've been preaching. I'm not going to say no more about the Osmond Lake deal for now, but I'm still going to find out who didn't pull permits for the trees, who cut down all the property, who cleared all the what company or whoever cleared the property. That's my new goal. I'm going to leave this off on the back burner and see where it goes on the little blocking up the property and everything. But I'm going to leave that alone for now. I'm going to move on to the who cut the trees down, because good God, if you look back in the archives, and I lived there for almost 50, 60 years, that was totally packed with trees. You couldn't fit 5 people around. So that's a little bit of chunk of change there. I talked to individuals down at certain places. She disappeared. Then the building disappeared. The archives were all messed up. Nobody knew about the property. So I'm going to leave the property alone for a little while. I'm going to go back now. It may take me a minute. I'm not the sharpest pencil, but I'm long lasting. I will find out who cut down all the trees and collected the money. There was money somewhere in there. Dude, that was a lot of trees. But that will be my new project. And I will be waiting to hear from whatever's going on. I will keep an ear open. And I will do it. And if he pops, I will take pictures for Blood Trail. If he shoots deer or whatever. Good enough for me.
Thank you, sir. I don't see Quincy Stewart. Mr. Kenny Anderson.
Good evening, and the struggle for black democratic human rights continues. The topic of my address this evening is, too many black people are still psychological slaves. Recently, we honored Martin Luther King Jr. His national holiday is recognized and celebrated towards the end of January, and then less than 2 weeks later in February, Black History Month is recognized and celebrated. Today marks the first day of Black History Month. My highlighted remarks for this sacred month this evening will be based on a quote from Dr. King, who stated, "As long as the mind is enslaved, the body can never be free." My comments will address and highlight that too many black people are still psychologically enslaved. For example, our enslaved ancestors were branded with their slave masters' names on their bodies. Today, we see millions of black teens and young adults drawing self-esteem and bragging, boasting about the white designer names that they wear, including getting these designer names tattooed all over their bodies. Every day, millions of black folks are scheming, exploiting, stealing, robbing, and killing each other over Cartier glasses, Gucci, Versace, and Louis Vuitton. Yes, they are sacrificing their lives, ending up in jails, prisons, hospitals, morgues, and graveyards for white designer names, the new slave masters of enslaving black consumer slaves. You don't see white people buying, getting in debt, wanting self-esteem, robbing, and killing each other over black designer clothing names. Psychologically, let us take a look at hair. Daily, millions of black women wear long hair wigs and weaves to have so-called long hair like white women. Black women annually spend hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars on wigs and weaves, super enriching Korean beauty supply stores. You don't see white women spending millions of dollars wearing black women's natural hairstyle wigs. It's been 157 years since physical slavery ended in 1865. Enslaved blacks on plantations were labeled and called the racist derogatory name niggers. Today, millions of black folks, particularly teens and black adults under 50, embrace this identity, many with a badge of honor. Too many black churches still have white Jesus hanging on their walls. Black folks, whether we like it or not, the majority of us are still slaves. We are enslaved by the invisible shackles on our minds that's manifested in shackled behavior. Dr. King said this, psychological freedom, a firm self-esteem is the most powerful weapon against the long night of physical slavery. The struggle continues.
Dr. Deidre Waterman.
Marcus Bowman was scheduled to be here. He was on your list, but he called me and said he had a family emergency, so I came to speak. This is an issue regarding Maynard Court that he has been present to talk to you about the last 2 weeks, and I'm coming because I wanted to just give you some information. There's a travesty here in terms of what has happened to at least one of the residents and maybe some of the others. To give you a little history about what's going on, this property, which is owned by a landowner, that was called and cited by the Oakland County Health Department and the state because there was a sewage backup problem with sewage leaking into the Clinton River, which was injurious to all of our drinking water. That was horrendous. So when I found out about this, and I found out about it through Marcus and Perry Earl, who came and voluntarily started to clean up the property, because also the tenants there were living in terrible, deplorable situations, leaky roofs, rodent infestation. And when I found out about the problem with the state, the sewage, I did immediately get a report from our code enforcement and our building and safety department, which found out that this problem had been going on for a year, okay? Not only so, but that second building at Maynard Court had been condemned by building and safety. Mike Wilson was here earlier. Now, when we jumped on that, we had to call in this landowner. The owner is well-known. It was introduced to me by Bob Wan, who said that they came in and brought 100 properties some couple of years ago. Since owned 346 properties, many of which had not been registered. Number one, is required by our law. Number two, had cited code violations. There were $15,000 worth of those violations that had not been paid. So immediately jumped on that, had building and safety and code enforcement. Had the city attorney talk to the attorney's, landowner attorney, and we said, hey, we're going to come down on you, but we want to give you a chance to get this sewage problem cleaned up, to restore, do the repairs for the tenants. You know, this is Pontiac, this isn't Bangladesh. Because it's affordable housing doesn't mean that people should be maltreated. I got personally involved, I did a site visit, and we said, we will not come down on you. We want to give you a chance to get this cleaned up, but you have to agree not to evict anybody and not to prevent people who wanted to move from using their Section 8 to move. That has not been done. That what's happened while, that adhered to that while I was mayor. As soon as I step out of being mayor, I see he handed one of the tenants an eviction notice, a woman with 6 children. I understand that, Melanie, you've been trying to help, you're on the board. There's something going on with Pontiac Housing Authority. Some of those people say they're sending their payments to the Pontiac Housing Authority, and also the Pontiac Housing Authority sold their building to this same landowner who is having all the properties. So I just bring that up back next week.
That concludes your public comment period.
Mr. Chuck Johnson.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, those of you here in the audience and those of you at home watching by television. I'm curious to know, first of all, the 5 items that you talked about, Chair, from 5 to 9. Are these contracts or are these arrangements or agreements? There's a difference between a contract and an agreement. So I'm curious to know which you're referencing. Getting to the lighting problem, about 3 weeks ago, I left the council meeting. I went out to get in my truck, and my tires were flat, and I know who did it. It's only because I had made complaints against the individual, and really nothing has happened in that situation. But I made a police report the night that it happened, and I carted air tanks up to get my tires back up. But what I would like to see the city do, and you need to do it ASAP, is to brighten those lights, put a brighter light in that whole parking lot. They're soft yellow or whatever. That would enhance or change the minds of individuals who would probably try to chase or rape some of our women who go out in the parking lot alone. Some men, they might get robbed, who knows. But we need to change the lighting in the parking lot. We need to put some cameras in parts of that parking lot, if not all of it, so that we can now protect the citizens who come to these meetings, who come in and out of City Hall at night. It's paramount that we look at that expeditiously. I just want to say again, I appreciate the council making their commitment to get rid of the blight in our city by awarding that demolition contract. If the contractor falls on his face, we'll soon know. I don't think I had too much more, but again, getting to Mayor Waterman's thought as it relates to those properties up there. Why don't we just go and take some red condemn signs and post them and embarrass this guy, whoever he is, you know, and he can't take the signs down. Maybe that'll help make him move forward. But we need to, per Mayor Waterman, we need to get on top of these blighted properties and properties that are not being registered, properties that are not being afforded here to as it relates to citizens. Poor kids just got to get out in this cold weather. Mayor, I know that you're going to be doing your part. We talked about it, and it's hopeful that this council will continue with your efforts to get this building department back where it needs to be. The last comment, Mayor Waterman bought a bunch of brand new vehicles, Mayor. We need to put people in those vehicles and get them on the road. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Bill Maxey.
Good evening to Mr. and Mrs. Pontiac, community at large, and governance. This day is the beginning of Black history. Thank you, Council, for passing the resolution. And Mr. Mayor, you had more to say about Black history and its effectiveness and promotion than the total council. So you must be on track. You must be on track. Last year, for Black history, we made headlines. We, the citizens, and ACES, a military organization here in the city of Pontiac. We got front page because we highlighted all of the military mights, women and men, and for those who had made the ultimate sacrifice, and to those now living. This year, we might want to do a little bit different. But let me say two things about Carter Woodson, the founder of Black history. In 1915, this came about. In 1970, he died. My question to us is, are we better off 70 years ago after his death, today, as we were then? Black history is a very proud month. Not only that, throughout the year. And as we talk about what's going to happen here in City Hall, I'm still talking to the mayor's office. We would like to have an exhibit again. We don't want to go backwards. And this time we're asking the citizens of Pontiac, if you have someone in your family that served in the military or someone you know in your community who does a great job as a community activist, and you want to have something said about them, hopefully we get the exhibit downstairs. We have a lot of good people in Pontiac who've contributed mighty to Black history. That having been said, my question again is 70 years later, let me say this. Land of the free, home of the brave. One nation under God, with liberty and justice for all, is not true. So as we move forward, and we are moving forward in history, African Americans have contributed greatly to the building of America, and we will not stop. There will be no erasing of our history. We'll go forward, and I look forward, Mr. Mayor, to working with you in that exhibit downstairs and anything else we do to highlight Black history. Thank you.
Ms. Billy Swazer.
Hello, my name is Billy Swazer. I am a member of the City of Pontiac Retired Employees Association. I'm on the board. And also I'm a member of the General Employees Retirement System, GERS. I'm on that board also as an elected member. I am talking to you about a time-sensitive matter, the topic of a permanent pension increase. CEPA membership is open to any person receiving the retirement benefits of the City of Pontiac General Employees Retirement System, as long as they pay dues and are current in the payment of the dues and special assessment. So even if you are not eligible for the health care, you are eligible to become a member of the CEPR and to have your voice heard about the permanent pension increase. As many of you know, my fellow retiree, Jim Mariani, and I paid the $3,000 for the actuary fee because we believe that using some of the excess GERS assets to fund the $400 permanent pension increase while still funding the VIVA for the health care promised on the settlement agreement is the best use of the system's assets, and the professionals working for the system and the city have indicated there are enough assets in the GERS to fund the promised health care benefits and the permanent increase in a way that leaves both plans very well funded. The system's actuaries, consultant, and attorney are some of the best professionals in their fields, and we also have no reason to doubt the competency of the city's actuary, all of whom have served the system and the city for many years. Although the professionals have advised that maintaining more assets in the GERS is in the best interest of all the GERS retirees. The VIVA plan, Section 9, says that any decision to amend the plan must be made by the City Council. So the VIVA board does not have the authority to unilaterally increase benefits. Mayor Grimal has already indicated that he would not support the increase to the health care benefits at this time. Mayor Grimal has indicated his support for continuing the permanent pension increase, but because certain members of the CEPA board have strongly objected to using GERS assets to pay for the increase, the $400 expired effective February 1st, 2022. Here's how you can help. The CEPA board bylaws indicate that 40 persons can call a special meeting of the membership within 14 days of delivering a letter requesting such a meeting to the board secretary. CEPA bylaws Article 11 states that at a duly held general membership meeting or special general membership meeting, the general membership should have the authority to reverse, modify, or clarify any decision or action of the board by majority vote. Time is of the essence. Once the money is transferred to the VIVA, it cannot be returned to the GERS under any circumstances. We would like you to call a special.
That concludes your public period.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. James E. Sabish.
Council, citizens of Pontiac. God instructed Moses to give us the 10 Commandments.
Are you okay, sir?
I'm as okay as any of us.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
I'm trying to be insightful in my statements. I'll repeat. God instructed Moses to give us the 10 Commandments. Jesus gave us the 11th and 12th Commandments. To love God. You've heard of God? G-O-D. And to love your fellow man. Is everybody listening? I think if we get that done, We won't be complaining. We'll be hugging each other. It's my 3 minutes. God has blessed us all without exception.
Ms. Veronica Taylor?
Good evening, Council, Mayor Brown, and the City of Pontiac. First, I'd like to honor God for life, and I truly mean that. Due to the circumstances I'm in and been in, due to a car accident, I thank God every day for life. First, I'm here to ask this council and this mayor board, it's Black History Month, and I want you all to recognize some beautiful women in the land of the living, and 3 of them live here in the city of Pontiac. These women work diligently here across Michigan for Pontiac and across this state. And I will start with their names. Joanne Barnes, Yvette Carson, Renee Beckley, and Joanne Wright. And y'all one and only that work diligently here in the city of Pontiac. Me, Veronica Taylor, for the state of Michigan. We want you all to start recognizing these living women that sit tirelessly 7 days a week to help put people in office. And during Black History Month, these women do not get paid. These women do it because they diligent care about the community that they live in. And I'm asking you all to start recognizing the living women that sit, and one is 72 years old, and I'm the baby out of them. I need you all for Black History Month to recognize them women that hit them doors, that carry literature, and knock and sit and phone bank to get governors and senators in-house. So I need you for Black History Month to recognize them women. Those are some beautiful Black women for the state of Michigan. Amen.
Ms. Tamika Ramsey?
First of all, I would like to wish President McGinnis happy birthday. You are committed to your job, sir, because I would have called in today. I also live on a cul-de-sac, and there are no street lights. It's an undeveloped subdivision, and I was told that because it was undeveloped, there would be no street lights. There are people who park on our street, who do drugs, who have sex. I have called Gil several times in the middle of the night, and I think a light would help prevent that. So if we can have a conversation about that, that would be great. The city charter will be on for the special election in May. And so I just would like to know how many people were approved to be on the ballot and what is the write-in process for that. I also are going to be on the ballot, so I'm going to give everybody a pen too. Last thing, I am the newest commissioner on the Housing Commission. And one of the things that myself and Commissioner Rutherford have been working on is to figure out what's going on at Manor Court. I would just like to say, I understand y'all just got here, and there are a lot of expectations and people expecting y'all to move like really quickly, and sometimes that's not possible. I also understand that this issue has been happening for a while, right? And anytime you start seeing boo-boo outside of people's houses, like conversations are no longer necessary. Like there needs to be legal action, and legal action should have happened a long time ago. And so I know that y'all are moving forward, as I am moving forward as the newest person on the Housing Commission, but people just don't have time on their sides. So can I apologize now and then ask y'all to move quicker? I'm sorry, but that it needs to happen. And I know that you inherited a lot of this, and I know that some of this is not your responsibility, but people really need some help right now. And so you do need to move quickly in trying to get some resolution, acknowledging that this has been happening for over a year, that this is not the first time that this has come before a council or a mayor, and it may not have been y'all, right? But these people, the living conditions are bad. We are trying to figure out, I am trying to figure out what part the Housing Commission had to play in this. But while we're trying to figure things out, people are suffering, and somebody could be homeless, and children could be out in the cold. And so, once again, I am apologizing for putting this on you when the previous mayor did not do her responsibility, or the previous council may not have been aware of this, but I am asking y'all to do this with utmost due diligence and quickly. Thank you.
Thank everyone that took part in our public comment. This concludes.
Thank you, President Pro Tem. We now turn to Mayor Grimal for closing comments. Mayor, you have the floor for 7 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let me begin by talking about the impending snowstorm. We'll see, of course, if it materializes. The weather forecasters don't always have it right. But it appears that we're going to be getting a substantial amount of snow. It is likely, we haven't made a decision yet, we'll be making a decision in the next 24 hours, if not sooner, but it is likely that we will be declaring a snow emergency here in the city if we get as much snow as they're forecasting. And I do want to remind folks of the parking rules during snow emergencies. It's very important that you help us do our job to clear the snow off of the streets, and that means parking in accordance with snow emergency parking rules. Specifically, any parking along snow emergency routes is not allowed during a snow emergency. Those snow emergency routes are marked with snow emergency route signs. In addition, on other streets, during a snow emergency, you are not allowed on uneven dates, meaning February 3rd, for example, to park on the side of the street with uneven address numbers. Similarly, on even dates, meaning February 2nd, tomorrow, you're not allowed to park on the street that has even address numbers. So it's very important to abide by these rules and guidelines so that we can efficiently plow the streets and clear the streets of snow. We are going to begin enforcing these rules, especially downtown, especially inside the loop. So again, do not park, assuming we declare a snow emergency, and you can get updates about that by going to the city website, but assuming we declare a snow emergency, please do not park on any snow emergency route on the street, and please do not park tomorrow on an even date, February 2nd, on the side of the street with even address numbers. On February 3rd, please do not park on the side of the street with odd address numbers. The other thing to note downtown is that parking is always prohibited between 3 a.m. and 6 a.m. And during times of heavy snow, we will be enforcing that. We're going to enforce that in the next couple of days, regardless of whether or not we declare a snow emergency. We've gotten the word out to a number of organizations and downtown businesses about this. We will be enforcing these parking regulations in downtown in the coming days. That's number one. Number two, As we've dug in more into the city's financial picture, I do want to just provide a very quick update that if one does not include American Rescue Plan dollars, ARP dollars, the city had passed the budget for this fiscal year that is in deficit, that is in a $3 million annual deficit roughly. So I want to put people on notice about that. We're digging into these numbers more and more. We're going to be providing a thorough update to City Council in the near future, so stay tuned in the next week or two. There has also been a practice going back to the past administration of paying certain employees at City Hall more than was budgeted for those positions and paying certain contractors more than was budgeted for those contractors. So we're going to be giving a full and complete detailed update and report to City Council about all of this in the near future, but I wanted to immediately notify the public about some of the information that we're uncovering as we get into the financial picture of the city. We take the situation at Maynard Court very seriously. I know that I was joined by several council members in doing a walkthrough out there a couple of weeks ago. We continue to look at any and all enforcement options against the landlord there. Keep in mind that condemnation is an option, but whenever a property is condemned, it means that the residents there have to immediately vacate the property. And so we've been working diligently now for over a week to try to secure alternative housing for people there. Regardless of whether we end up moving forward with condemnation, it's very important that the residents there have better options and higher quality housing opportunities. So I know that Deputy Mayor Stevens has been working very diligently to identify other housing options. I've personally been on the phone with the resident who was referenced during public comment yesterday, as well as today. I'm happy to say that she is in a hotel. She is not homeless or without shelter. She's in a hotel. We're going to continue to work with her to make sure that she receives permanent housing. The landlord has agreed not to obstruct her ability to use Section 8 vouchers with future landlords, so we've had those conversations and try to make sure that the landlord is doing right in that regard. So stay tuned. We are working very, very diligently on this issue and take it very seriously as we do all landlord situations in the city of Pontiac. The other item that I would like to touch on is I know Mr. Lloyd Gary spoke about Osmond Lake. He's mentioned that at a couple of past city council meetings this previous month as well. We have had the city attorney send a cease and desist letter to the private property owner who was taking unauthorized actions on public property. And if that private property owner continues to take illegal actions on city property out by Osmond Lake, we will pursue further enforcement actions against that private property owner. So I want to assure you that we're taking that very, very seriously as well. I want to touch on Mr. Johnson's comments about new vehicles. I'll follow up with you offline to find out more about that. I can tell you that DPW vehicles, at least, have not been replaced in recent years. We have not purchased, apparently, the city has not purchased any new DPW vehicles in the past 12 years, so we don't have new vehicles there, and that's causing some maintenance challenges that we're working through. And lastly, I just want to touch on the pension fund issues. I know I talked in great detail last week about those issues, but we'd like to see some continuation of the monthly stipend for retirees, but that's only possible to do in a financially responsible way if the pension fund, the GERS system, is left with sufficient funds to do that, as Ms. Swayzer spoke to. So if anybody has any additional questions, I know I'm just about out of time, please feel free to email me. I gave my email earlier. Please feel free to reach out. You can also use an easier to remember email address, mayor@pontiac.mi.us. That's probably easier for folks than trying to remember how to spell my last name. So thank you all.
Thank you. And Mayor Greimel, does snow emergencies impact unlit cul-de-sacs on Tamika Ramsey Street? Or is people being nasty, they have to move their vehicles especially for snow plowing? Just curious. With that, Clerk Doyle, closing comments.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll be brief. There was a question asked about the Charter Commission. 6 candidates' names will appear on the ballot. I don't have the name of those 6 candidates with me. I can provide them next week. And the last day to file to be a write-in candidate for the Charter Commission is April 22nd at 4 p.m. Thank you.
And a follow-up, do they file that with which office, sir?
With the city clerk's office.
Thank you very much. We now move to City Council closing comments. District 1's Councilwoman, the Honorable Melanie Rutherford.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Let's try it again. Good evening, everyone. All right, fake it till you make it. Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed when it is, until it is faced. That was said by James Baldwin and also taught to me by Patrice Waterman. I do not grandstand or talk about things I do off the grid, but I felt the need tonight to point out facts and not fiction. Fact, the next day when the young lady came up here from Maynard Court, she was given $2,000 for her deposit. Fact, here's the receipts if anybody want to see it. It's not to put it on display, it's just to tell the truth. Facts, the very next day after that, First Presbyterian agreed to not only pay the deposit, but also the first month rent for this person. That is fact, not fiction. Fact, after that was done, an additional $5,000 has been donated for her to make sure that she's secure, because at the end of the day, before I was on council, before I was on Pontiac Housing Commission, I'm a mother, a single mother. And so I bleed different, I read different, I do things differently. And I don't do it to make sure people say, oh, good job, Melanie Rutherford, because that's my name. I do it because it's the right thing to do, and I'm a Christian at the end of the day. And I'll say this full-heartedly, if I could take a minute from you, sir, thank you, that when we got involved, it wasn't just a me thing, it was a we thing, because we operate as a we team. I understand the frustration that people have, but if you won't allow us the opportunity to show you how to do it the right way, how are we going to ever see what it right looks like? I understand people want to be passionate, but I will never grandstand ever again to prove what I do, because my walk and my talk is what I do. Excuse me. My walk and my talk is proven because somebody is safely in a hotel. We are working diligently to get this done. It is unfair for anyone to pass the buck to us when we just got here in 1 month. And if ain't nobody else gonna say how I'm offended, I'm offended. Lastly, I address everyone at the offices that they hold. My name is Councilwoman Rutherford. It's not Melanie, it's Councilwoman Rutherford. And if I show respect to you, you have to show respect to me, because I am doing the job that I was voted for by 857 members of my constituents. I thank you and have a good evening.
Thank you. District 2's representative, the Honorable Councilman Brett Nicholson.
Another week of the mayor's administration being incredibly responsive and supportive to District 2 residents, so thank you. Wanted to let people know, as Tim is, Mayor Greimel has expressed, that we are finding things out every day. And we will continue to find things out as we go through a forensic audit process. And an opportunity for you to hear more about that. Those is at our Finance and Personnel Committee meeting. Those are going to be on the second Thursday of every month. The next one is February 10th at 2 o'clock in the Legislative Conference Room. We'll be hearing from the Finance Director and the HR Department. Wanted to make sure everybody in District 2 knows those links for our community projects, sign-ups, ideas, knowledge collecting essentially are on my Facebook page, are on my council page, as well as on Nextdoor. So if you can find them there, or you can get a paper copy from me. Earth Day, we also are making sure that every single street in District 2 is adopted. We are supplying all of those supplies to make sure that that happens, including a dumpster. That will be, of course, April 22nd. That sign up is all on those same areas. Want to let everyone know, in every district we have this landlord-tenant issue. It extends to every corner of the city. Hundreds of properties being owned by single individuals that don't live in the city, that have very little interest in the city other than their investment. I am going through every street in District 2. And it has been it's very clear when you look at some of these filings and where these landlords say they live or where these LLCs are registered to, that past administrations did not do due diligence when these properties were registered. There is a particular landlord that has properties on Dwight Street that are registered to Menachem Begin Street in Sylvan Lake. If you know who that is, it's the former Prime Minister of Israel. That is not a street that exists in Sylvan Lake. Had previous administrations done their due diligence and checked these LLCs, simple lookup on the Licensing and Regulatory Authority, they would see these are not legitimate. So as these property taxes are paid, those properties are still here. When the property taxes don't get paid, some things come to light, right? So as we do a deeper dive, all of that information, all of my research, of course, I will turn right over to administration, and I'm very, I trust that they will do everything that they can to make sure that these wrongs are written. This council is doing everything that they can, despite what you hear. Not everybody has all of the facts, and some people are trying to protect whatever legacies that they're hoping to continue to protect, that we will continue to bring the darkness to light. So thank you from District 2. Please sign up. Let's do some positive things like community projects and Earth Day cleanups.
Thank you. The councilman from District 3, the Honorable Mikhail Goodman.
Thank you. I'm going to go in order of least talking to most talking. District 3 soon will be coming up with how we communicate with the district in terms of a contact form, a monthly meeting. Those things are in the works. Luckily, unfortunately for me, I didn't have much of the infrastructure coming in, so building a lot of this from scratch to make sure it's as efficient as possible for me to be able also to do my job properly is a lot of what's going into this. So that will be coming soon. Very happy to see the council and the mayor support the resolution in regards to smart and urban hills. Again, as a person who rode smart buses longer than I've been driving, I take a lot of happiness in that we were able to pretty much make a stance on this, and then again encourage our neighbor to maintain their current relationship and help Pontiac be a good hub for public transportation now and hopefully expand that in the future. Very excited to see this code of ethics passing. Again, doing everything that we can to restore trust and faith that the community has in City Hall is extremely important, and I'm very happy to see that pass unanimously. And then to the Maynard Court issue, something that Housing Commissioner Tamika Ramsey had brought up. There needs to be, at this point, aggressive accountability. The fact that this has been an issue that has continued from one term into a new one, with everything being so major and egregious, is a problem. The fact that we're having a discussion about sewer water in someone's backyard and it being kind of we'll get to it eventually, that is a problem. That is a hazard. And the fact that that has, again, spread into a new council term, into a new term for a mayor, is a problem, and someone was not doing their job properly along the way, and people have suffered for it. That should never happen again in the city. However, with that being the point, personally, I don't want to ever hear in council chambers again someone comparing the city of Pontiac to a foreign country as if that foreign country doesn't deserve basic human decencies, and we do, as if we're so much better than them. But also, it is the second time in less than a year that I've heard a person with some position in the city of Pontiac refer in some way comparing our city to a foreign country. That is a problem. I personally don't want to hear it again. And yeah, I'll leave it at that. That is all my notes for my public comment, for my council comment.
Thank you, sir. We now turn to District 4, their Honorable Representative, Councilwoman Kathleen James.
Good evening, everyone. I would like to say, in terms of Black History Month, I think I am probably the oldest member of City Council, so I consider myself Black History. But I want to... I could tell a lot of stories. But I want to say that I think the most important thing in Black history is to remember that, you know, the building block of society is family. And Black history is about great Black history, is about great Black families. And I would like to see us in this month, you know, let's focus on our families. Let's focus on making memories with our family. Let's focus on talking to our families about, you know, I talk to my grands all the time about the way things used to be, and just giving them an understanding of the value systems, because we're lacking value systems today. So we need to talk to our children, our grands, and really build on family, because a city is no stronger than its families. So I want to commend all of the families of the city of Pontiac to celebrate yourselves for Black History Month. Also, we had our first District 4 Community Council meeting. It was virtual, but it was a great meeting. I want to thank our Mayor, Tim Grimel, for being a part of that meeting. It was a great meeting, a great start for us, and we are looking forward to tackling the problems and the challenges for District 4. Also, there will be even though we're facing a snowstorm, we are planning to have a spring. Leon's ice cream store is about to open up, and I'll tell you, I don't know what it is, but as soon as those people open up, you just kind of start feeling like spring is coming. So spring is coming. We are planning a spring cleanup. It is timed around Earth Day, which is May the 22nd. That's a Friday.
April the 22nd.
Did I say May? I'm sorry. Thank you. Thank you, Councilwoman Brother. But anyway, May or April the 22nd. If that's a bad day in terms of weather, the alternate day would be May the 7th. I think it's first Saturday in May. So I want all of the districts to be working on what they plan to do. We want to try to focus on the parks, to try to get the parks cleaned up for that day, because as you know, as soon as the weather breaks, the kids are going to be in the park. So we are looking forward to the park cleanup, and that's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you. Hailing from District 5, the Honorable William Parker Jr., Councilman, your closing comments.
Thank you, Brother President. Good afternoon, District 5. I just want to say thank you for your continued support and for your continued diligence. We will be having our first meeting February 10th, 6 p.m. in the Lions Den downstairs of the CDC. Please, if you're interested in how we're going to move forward, please come out and join us February 10th, 6 p.m. in the Lions Den. As I sit and say Happy Black History Month, a lot of things run to my mind, but the first thing that runs through my mind is Dr. King's statement, I believe, not only in his I Have a Dream statement, but also in his letter to the Birmingham Jail statement, is that we cannot forget the urgency of now. We know that in 1492 Columbus sailed the ocean blue, but we also know that slavery happened. We know that the Revolutionary War happened, but we also know the Alamo happened. We know peonage happened. We know World War II happened, but we also know Jim Crow and segregation happened. We know Fort Sumter happened. You know, that's how our national song was based on what happened at Fort Sumter. But we also know the Underground Railroad happened. God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, thou who hast brought us thus far along the way. We know that Vietnam happened, but we also know voting suppression has happened and is still happening. We know the KKK happened, but we also know BLM happened. We know that the Black Panther movement happened, which started WIC. That's how that started, was with the Black Panthers. And we know all of this history, but what we really fail to recognize is Black history for America did not start at slavery. Amen. And so as we celebrate Black history, as we honor all of those veterans who died for a country that they could not even vote for, as we honor all of those who have died and every black person who has died in every war in this country, we have to recognize that if we're going to talk about history, let's talk about all of history. We're having a discussion now about critical race theory. History is history. Tell it all. All history ain't good. And ours certainly is not good. But let's not hide it underneath the shadow of oppression that we keep hiding on and make it think that it was all great and good. We know Wounded Knee happened. We also know that the Trail of Tears happened. We know the internment of Asian Americans happened during World War II. All of that is American history, and a lot of that I did not learn in school. And so as we celebrate black history, let's remember that there are a lot of people, black people, people of color, who has dedicated their lives to supporting the American dream. But as Dr. King says, even he was talking about back in '63, that even now the so-called Negro still is not free. And so until we can have liberty and justice for all, which we still do not have, we're going to be fragmented. And as we only celebrate in February, and then we get talked about for why we celebrated in February, let's remember that we are supposed to be one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Have a great evening.
Amen. Thank you, sir. Deputy Mayor Stevens, were you trying to get my attention, or were you just excited when she mentioned the frosty tree?
With them today, they're open.
Thank you for that public service announcement. Located in District 7. President Pro Tem Carrington, 3 minutes, your closing comments, sir.
Good evening, everyone. First and foremost, I'd like to thank everyone that came down and joined us tonight on this first day of Black History Month. So why is it important to us to celebrate Black History Month? Some may wonder. This month-long observation in the U.S. and Canada is a chance to celebrate African American achievement in this country and provide a fresh reminder to take stock where systematic racism persists and give visibility to the people and organizations that have created change historically in this country. We have accomplished many things, but we still have so much more to accomplish. We have to continue to fight for our rights in this country. And remember those trailblazers that died and gave their lives for us to have a better quality of life here on these shores. Also, I'd like to, Pontiac Meals on Wheels is giving a Black History Month luncheon Tuesday, February 8th through March the 1st at the Bowen Center at 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. Thursday, February the 10th through March the 3rd at Ruth Peterson for 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. I'd like to close my closing remarks with a comment by Dr. King, who delivered a sermon on November the 4th, 1956, to his congregation at the Dexter Avenue Baptist Church in Montgomery, Alabama. He spoke on the potential dangers of capitalism. He stated, "I'm afraid that many among you are more concerned about the making a living than making a life." I'm going to repeat that. He said, "I'm afraid that many among you are more concerned about making a living than making a life. You are prone to judge the success of your profession by the index of your salary and the size of the wheelbase on your automobile, rather than the quality of your service to humanity." So as we serve the citizens of Pontiac, we got to remember that we have a responsibility to humanity, not basically feeding our pockets and our salaries. He also further stated that the misuse of capitalism can also lead to tragic exploitation. So I'd like to close on that, because as a lot of businesses come into our city and the council get a chance to actually go over a lot of these contracts, we need to make sure that these contracts and these businesses are here not only to make money in our city, but also to establish and help our quality of life for our citizens in our city. Yeah. And I close with that. Good night.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Mike McGinnis. Thank you for being with us tonight, and thank you for the birthday wishes and the birthday cake action. I'm 38 and feeling great. And when I turned 18, so 20 years ago now, I was living in Pontiac with my dad at Court Street, and to have told young Mike, who just with that, I've been voting for 20 years, to tell young Mike that he would be here with you tonight, I'd say, thank God I'm alive. Thank God I'm still alive, but I've had great many blessings and opportunities in my life. Many of you at this dais and in the audience and those watching have played a part in that. And that goes to my neighbors in District 7 as well. Thank you for the opportunity to serve. It's a heavy responsibility, but it's a really rewarding responsibility. We continue to try and address as many items of business as possible in as efficient a manner as possible. We will keep at that. Thank you to my colleagues who invest a lot of time in researching, reviewing, creating the items that come before us and those items that are still in the pipeline. And we know that there are so many needs that our neighbors have. We take it seriously. We'll keep working extremely hard. And our decisions are made better by your feedback. So please don't be hesitant. Utilize the means to communicate with us that work best for you and your very busy lives. And so we welcome that. I have submitted to the city 20 different street signs that are missing in District 7. I feel like District 7's got a lot, so we're on the map, and we want you to know how to find every possible part of our district. So if, to my neighbors, please share with me others that you've noticed as well. That need goes for street lights. That goes for severe impediments in the street. That goes for dumping. Any issue that you come across, your neighborhood and my neighborhood, we can make it better together as we systemically work as a council and a mayor to legislate and then execute so that way the systems work better across the board, even if nobody ever reported something. That's the ideal situation we want to get to. But in the meantime, together, we need to roll up our sleeves so that way we can make as positive a difference as possible in our neighborhoods. Thank you very much for being here. We have a very busy series of February council meetings to come as the administration is originating items, the council is drafting different ordinances, resolutions in particular, and for Black History Month, we are diving deep per earlier conversations in terms of the important events, places, and movements that happened here in Pontiac. So we as a city council, on behalf of the community, are highlighting them. So we look forward to bring those to the community and this body. With that, I'm out of time. Is there a motion to adjourn this evening's meeting?
So moved.
Support.
It's been moved by Councilman Parker and seconded by Councilwoman Rutherford that we adjourn this evening's meeting. Hearing no discussion. Oh, pardon me, Councilman Parker, you have the floor.
Yes, sir, I do. Just for a moment. First, happy birthday, Mr. President. And I know we were planning on having a small celebration in the chambers there with you this afternoon if you have time. And I know since we have a large cake out there and everybody don't want to get fat, we invite you who could stay to come and get some cake as well.
They can come.
I love it. Thank you for that housekeeping item. We have a motion before us to adjourn. Hearing no further discussion, roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Parker,
Yes.
Rutherford,
Yes.
Harrington,
Yes.
Goodman,
Yes.
James,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Nicholson.
Yes.
7 yeas.
That motion carries. We stand adjourned at 9:01 p.m. Thank you very much.
Both of your closing comments were really, really great, I have to say, in their own way. I was really impressed by both of your comments.
Mr. Bass.
Well, that was impressive. It really was. But